Ladies and entrepreneurs, Andy here, author of the best Tinder guide on the internet and guy who loves doing epic, long, 3-hour podcasts. This is the Kill You're Gonna Loser show. Let's fucking go. Sat down with a guy from my forums, Bman. A lot of you will know him as the guy who exited his divorce and then had 10 lays, slept with 10 lovely ladies this year. So I picked his brain about how he did that. We talked a lot about relationships and his divorce, some things that he learned, some things that he, is really grateful for. We talked a lot about entrepreneurship and starting a business, gave you guys a lot of advice, answered a bunch of your questions, and it ended up being a fucking kick-ass interview. I really think this is probably one of the best videos on my channel, made mostly by, him. He gave a ton of value. Really grateful for having him on. So I hope you guys enjoy this video. Do you have a time limit of how long you want to talk for?
Nope, I'm good till whenever.
Okay, brother, then we're going to go for 4 fucking hours. Then.
I mean, if you
shouldn't have fucking said that.
For me, the start of my self-development journey was I went originally to school for architecture, got a bachelor's and master's in architecture, and started working in the field for about 3 years and just found myself completely fucking miserable. I was very depressed. I was like, the work that I'm doing has no meaning. I would, cry on the way home, driving home from the office. And I was like, I got to do something. I got to figure this out, and realize that up until that point, I'd been, fed a story about do really good in school, go get a good job, graduate from college. And I was like, who the fuck am I? And I had to start going down that journey to figure that out.
Dude, this is crazy. I was literally listening to a podcast, I'm halfway through it, with Jordan Peterson and this other comedian called Theo Von. And it's a really good, interesting podcast. Came out about a year ago. So you can just search for those 2 names. And they're literally talking about what you're talking about here. If you don't sort of have your own plan for your life or your own idea of what you want, you end up just being a pawn in somebody else's plan. And it doesn't have to be nefarious like that. It's not like they're trying to fuck you or something, but it's just
right.
If you don't stand up and say, here's what I want, other people, usually out of the goodness of their heart, because they don't want to see you lost, they go, okay, well, hey, do this. B-man, go and do this. Be an architect. And for me, it was the same story. It's you're intelligent. You have to go to university. And it's but what if I don't know what I want? What if I don't want to go to university? It's well, you have to, because you have to do something. And so I think there's almost this fear of letting people say, I don't know, and just sitting there in that discomfort. It's not even uncomfortable, but sitting in there in that I don't know and figuring it out. I think that's almost frowned upon. It's if you sit there and say, I don't know, people are oh, well, you're not the expert then. You don't have your shit together. How are you this fucking incompetent? Especially with, have you found that on your podcast that there's either pressure from other people or pressure that you put on yourself to be the expert? Or have you been pretty good at embracing no, I'm the student. I don't know. I'm just here to learn.
That's a mentality that I've definitely adopted, is being the student. I can learn from anybody. And going back to Socrates, basically being humble and saying, I don't know everything, and continuing to keep learning is definitely something I've adopted. But I think in the beginning of my journey, going to college was pretty much the only route, because I came from my mom was a single mom and we were very poor. And so she's you have to do good in school because you have to get out of this life. And so I was okay, that's what I'm going to do. And so when I went to college, I didn't even stop to think about is this what I want to do? I was architecture is something that I can do. It's going to pay well. And so I just went down that route. And it wasn't until I got out afterwards and I'm miserable that I started to think about it, because I'm somebody that's always questioning why. My mom would definitely say I was a pain in the ass growing up, because I would always ask why to what she told me to do. And so then I was getting in the real world and working, and I'm asking the bosses why, why are we doing these things? And can we do it better? And da-da-da. And they're no, basically just go fucking sit down, go to your desk, do your work. And I'm just this new person trying to make things better. And I'm this sucks. So I was okay, well, maybe I could just do this for myself, try and make my life better and apply that to my life.
Do you, okay, I'm assuming you've told your mother many years ago, I'm not going to be an architect, mother. That is not in my journey. How did she take that? How was that conversation?
So The conversation happened when I told her that I was basically quitting architecture
Mhm.
and I was going to go into basically trying out. At the time, I was like freelancing. I was doing like web design and photography and graphic design, trying out different side gigs there.
Mhm.
And I told her basically I'm going to jump into this. Like I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I'm going to figure something out there. And at that point, she had issues with mental health. She has PTSD, and
Mhm.
it comes from her childhood. And she did an amazing job of like holding it back while she was raising me. But after I went to college, it kind of like opened Pandora's box. And so
Yeah.
she went through a couple years of like having major breakdowns, hearing voices, things like that. So we went through this whole battle there. And at the end of that, she's doing much better. But I'm telling her, I'm not going to do architecture anymore. And she's like, I really just want you to be happy. Like, if you think you can
Yeah.
go forward and be an entrepreneur, she's like, I support you 100%.
I think because you've probably seen it on my forums, and I've definitely seen it on my forums and in the comments and my clients and stuff, where people will have this pressure from society or often their parents, or a lot of the time it comes from us. It's pressure that we've put on ourselves that we personify inside. We say like our mothers are pushing us or society is or I got to live up to my father's expectations, but it's like that's you doing it to yourself. But
Right.
the point is a lot of people have these pressures that they put on themselves, and I don't think they've ever tested it and actually gone to their parents and said, you said it best. Why? Why? Like, why do you want me to go to college? And if you actually sit down with your parent, and I'm not blaming kids, we're innocent in this. Like, why would we question our parents? We're just going to do what
Right.
we're told at the start. But if you ever do go to them and say, why? And they'll say, well, because that will get you lots of money. And you go, yeah, okay, but like, why do I want lots of money? And they'll say, well, because then you can support yourself and you'll never have to be poor like me. And then you go, okay, I understand that. But like, why do I want to do that? If you keep asking why and going deep on that, and sometimes your parents haven't even gone deep on that. They don't know why they're forcing you to go to college or to get a good job. But if you do ever have that conversation, it will eventually get down to at the very bottom, I want you to be happy. And then you can have a conversation about, well, what if this architecture degree doesn't make me happy?
Yeah.
And then you can have a very honest conversation and they'll say, okay, well, what would make you happy? Like how do we make you happy? Because I had the same shit when I finally told my parents, like, I had my big breakdown. I was like, I'm depressed. I've been suicidal for like, 8 years, all of this shit. They were shocked. They were surprised. But at the end of it, they said, we just want you to be happy. If you didn't want to go to university, don't. If you were unhappy in your relationship, why the fuck did you stay? Like every time we called you, and my parents would call me once a week, every time we called you and we said, how are you going? And you lied to us and said, everything's fine. Like, we didn't want you to be happy if you were faking it. We just wanted you to ultimately be happy. And I think, again, a lot of parents, a lot of society will put these pressures on us and they'll have these blueprints or these plans for our life. But you have to kind of realize they are doing it out of kindness or the goodness of their heart. They just,
Right.
you haven't told them that you have a different plan. So they're going to assume, okay, well, I have to take over your life. My girlfriend Imogen went through this. She was going to university and doing a double degree of like engineering and something else. She fucking hated it. She fucking hated it. But she thought that that's what she had to do because her dad told her, like, her dad's like Chinese and, he came to this country and built something of himself and like really hustled, it sounds like. And so he had this mindset of like, the only way that my children can be happy is if they hustle like me. I didn't get to go to university, so they fucking have to. And I had an intervention with her and one of my other friends as well. We sat down and we had an intervention and we said, what do you actually fucking want? And she was like, she'd never been asked that before. She'd never asked herself that question. And when she finally said, I don't want to go to university, I want to do art, but I'm not allowed to, or that's stupid, or, artists can't make money, like all the limiting beliefs. She gave herself the courage to pursue that, to quit uni. And for a couple of months, her dad was like, why? Like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, you're letting down the family. But eventually, it probably took 6 months. He called her one day and he said, if you don't want to go to university, I don't want you to. I just want you to be happy. And so I think there's always that layer of happiness underneath. It's just that we get into this big fucking battle, don't we, against our parents?
Yeah, I think
ultimately they want what's best for us.
Yeah, I think they're just trying to hand a template that they know well to you and figure that will get you success. So interesting, the words, the pursuit of happiness that's in the Declaration of Independence for the US, when Jefferson was writing that and talking about happiness, it wasn't in this like blissful or joyful state. Happiness in the time that he was writing it meant fitting with the right circumstances. So the real line is like the pursuit of finding different ways to fit with your circumstances. So the things that you care about, your personality, your values, and finding different ways to navigate the world so that you can, get the success that you want or whatever you want in the world that fits with those things that are in line with you.
Yeah, it sounds like libertarianism essentially. It's something deeper than that though. It's like honesty or integrity with yourself and figuring out like what do I actually want and then admitting that to yourself. And that can be really fucking hard. Like I'm in the middle of doing a podcast. I've already written the notes. I just have to sit down and record it. Basically, I'm going to call it something like, what do you want? Or like, what the fuck do you want? Something like that. Yeah. To really say to people, what do you actually fucking want? Like look in the mirror, ask yourself, what do you want? Because you've likely never asked it. And what I'm going to talk about, and you tell me if you felt any of this for yourself with my content. I find a lot of people maybe most people will look at my content and go, okay, like I respect this guy. He seems like he's put in some hard work and he's done some things. Because he's done the things that he's done, I need to do the same things. He even says in his tagline, if I did it, you sure as hell can too. And so therefore I need to copy play. Like he's going to be my new template. He's going to be my new religion almost. He is going to be the new Bible that I just study religiously and do everything he does. Despite the fact that on almost every page he says, do whatever the fuck you want to do. Don't just do what I'm doing because I did it. But I understand that if you're someone who's, and I did the same thing with the red pill. If you're someone that's gone through a lot of pain or heartache and then you come to some new material that seems to have a lot of answers or seems like it could help you, you can almost get into this trap or fall into this trap where it becomes almost like a cult for you. Like you just go, I'm going to copy. That's going to be my new fucking plan. And I think that's fine at the start because if you don't have a plan, fine. Like at least go towards something that seems like it might bring you happiness. But did you feel any of that pressure? Did you feel any of that when you found like maybe my content or anyone else that you follow where you're like, oh, I got to do all the things this guy does?
Your content was much more in line with what I wanted. So I followed it much easier. But some of the other content, like when so I got in a relationship with my ex-wife in college and we graduated and had moved to the old town that I was living in. And starting to be in this relationship, and I was not entirely sure what the hell I should be doing. And like sex was great in the beginning, and then like things started to slow down. And I have a very high sex drive, so I was like, I want more sex. I got to figure this out. This is also when I started, going into self-development. So I found my way to the red pill, and I got there, and there was plenty of stuff in there that was like fantastic for me to learn. When I was in high school, like got friend zoned a couple times, and that was definitely because I didn't have a dad around to like really teach me these things. So some of the things at the red pill there was like I needed to open my eyes, but then there was a lot of stuff that just felt very like manipulative or just like too extreme, and especially like small stuff of like never say you're sorry to your
I know. I did that for like 2 years. I was like a sociopath with that shit. Yeah.
I did it for a while, and I was like, this is fucked up. Like there's sometimes like you need to say you're sorry. The other one that really got me was like every woman's gonna cheat on you, or like eventually they'll cheat on you. And I was like, well, I'm like, my mom's not like this, and like this girl that I'm with, like she genuinely doesn't seem like that. And they're like, well, that's what everybody would say. And I was like, I don't know. She genuinely does not seem like she would go and cheat on me. So there was just like some toxic stuff in there that I didn't agree with. So I had to like kind of go start searching for other things. Fast forward to when I'm getting divorced, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to go back out on the dating scene. How the hell am I going to do that? I never really learned these skills in the first place. So I was reading some like pickup artist material, and I was like, I'm so fucked. I was like, this is all like night game stuff. And I'm like, I don't go out during the nighttime. Like my schedule, I get up at 4:30 in the morning. Like I don't want to be out forever. It's like, I don't act like these people. I don't want to do all these routines. Like I'm already have enough anxiety. I don't want to try and remember
Hmm.
this whole stack of stuff that I gotta try and do. So I was like, okay, this sucks. Like, how am I gonna do any of this? And that's when I was like, I mean, this is how they say they get laid, and so I guess I could follow this model, but it's not gonna work for me. And I was at the time part of like some red pill Discord, and somebody had happened to post your guide, the Tinder guide, on there, just like in some like saved message. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna go check this out, and had read through it. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. Like step by step has everything in there. I think this is a model I could follow. And then I started reading your story, and I was like, this guy seems legitimate. Like the thing that drew me the most to you was uh, being very honest and being very truthful. And that was something that like deeply resonated with me, because I didn't like in the red pill or the pickup material that sometimes it was very dishonest or manipulative, or you're not showing your true self. And I was like, I don't want to be somebody else. Like, I just want to be me and do this stuff.
Yeah, I think the word that always comes up for me is like integrity.
Yeah.
And if you think about what integrity is, it's basically only something that you can define. Only you can look at yourself in the mirror and say, am I a man or a person of integrity? Like, do I feel like I'm happy with the decisions I made? And this isn't an ethical thing. And I think sometimes people mistake honesty for that. They go, oh, so you're a good person if you're honest and you're bad if you're not. No, 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 no. Like it's not about what I or Bman or anyone else might judge you for. It's, are you happy with the way you've operated? Are you going to get to the end of your life and lay on your deathbed and go, yeah, I really like the person that I am, or not? And if you're not happy, that's completely fine. That's changeable. But that's my main reason, or one of my main reasons for talking about honesty and stuff like that, is what I want people to do is go out and test. And I say this all the time, go out and test everything.
Mhm.
Like actually experiment. We're trying to figure out what you want rather than what Andy says you should want or what B-Man says you should want. And so try some pickup artist stuff. And if you like it, fucking go for it. Great. If you try my stuff and you like that, great. Absolutely. Brilliant. Wonderful. But at the end of the day, it's about experimenting and trying a bunch of different stuff. And I think people have a fear of experimenting for a million different reasons, of like, oh, I could look like an idiot, I could fail. What if I'm not an alpha male? What if she, like, a lot of the red pill stuff seems based on fear. Like, if I'm not an alpha male, she'll leave me. Or if I don't hold frame, she'll cheat on me. It's like, do you really want to, does it feel good inside you to be operating from a place of fear? That's the opposite of abundance. It's the opposite of self-love. It doesn't feel very masculine either. I think a big part of masculinity that gets lost is like, there is a huge element of self-love. And I think even phrasing it like that, a lot of guys will go, oh, that's gay. Like, what are you, self-love? Oh, it's gay. That sounds like feminine. And it's like, no, God, you're missing. Have you even read Meditations? I'm assuming you've read.
Yes.
It's like, that's a book of this cunt fucking writing in a diary. And it's like held up by most people as like one of the most masculine books of all time. And it's this guy writing in his fucking diary about his feelings. If that's not self-love, I don't know what else is. And so, yeah, I think we can bring it back to integrity. And this isn't about saying the red pill is right or wrong. I love the red pill. I got so much out of the red pill. Holy shit. It isn't about saying I'm better than pickup artists. It isn't about saying pickup artists are all bad or this. Don't listen to any one person's opinion of what plan you should follow or what you should do or who you should be. It's like, go out and experiment, try a bunch of different stuff. And it sounds like you basically did that. And then you were like, okay, I like this honesty thing. So how have you found honesty, man? Like, how's it been? I'm assuming you've been, because you've slept, if we spit out numbers, I think you said you've been with 10 women since your divorce earlier in the year. Was it difficult to be honest at the start? Was there, I mean, you just come fucking out of a divorce. Is that, how does one open up after a divorce? You were together for like, what, 8 years? Like, how does one just open up and pour your heart out there?
Yeah. First off, I mean, the divorce was amicable, and like we're still friends. And so it was painful, but it wasn't like detrimental, like ending my life. So I had a good stand there, and having your content in the beginning, like a roadmap to start walking down, helped a lot to like getting the wheels turning. Being honest came first off, like in the messages. I loved that it was quick and upfront, and I was like, this is exactly what I want. because I don't like texting. I don't want to be texting back and forth. So I was like, okay, if I can be upfront, this is amazing. And then being on the dates, and being like, okay, I would just want something casual. I see multiple girls. By the way, I am recently divorced. I started, putting that in there. And each time it was like, this is a little scary to tell you, but also I'd rather just be me. Like, I don't want to hide this from you. I think with like pickup material, the like the longer you're trying to have a relationship with somebody, I feel like the more honest you need to be upfront with them.
Yeah.
So like,
otherwise you're not living with integrity. It hurts.
Right. So like Mark Manson, he talks about yes women and then maybe women and no women. And with like yes women, you don't have to do much game. Like you just show up and don't fuck up. With like maybe women is like where you may need to use more game. And I feel like if you want to have a longer relationship with one of those maybe women, then you need to do it from a place of integrity rather than like something manipulative. Otherwise, eventually they're going to find out. And so I was like, I just want to operate from, full integrity, be honest, be upfront, and then we can build the relationship from there, like have a good foundation.
How was the response from those girls when you were honest? I've been in a divorce. I'm seeing other people.
Yeah, all of them have been receptive. I've not had one that's like, that's fucked up. Or, I mean, I've had a couple be like, wow, I mean, that's like pretty recent for you to be, getting back out on the market. Like been like 2 or 3 months. And I was like, yeah, but I mean, and then I tell them about the story of, it's very amicable, like all that. We're still friends. And generally they go along with it. Had no problems.
I literally saw something came up in my YouTube recommended this morning from the Fresh and Fit podcast, and it said that the headline was something along the lines of why you should never be vulnerable with a woman. And it usually comes from a place of fear when they say that. They're like, because then she'll think you're a beta male and she'll think you're a little pussy bitch and she'll run away and like these fears. And when I hear you say, I opened up, I told them about my divorce. I said, this is a little hard for me, but I'd rather be honest with you. What I'm hearing is a man who has some fears, having the courage to embrace them and face them and smash through them. And guess what women hear when you do that with that? And it's not even confidence, but it's like honesty or integrity, something like that. Women hear that. Women hear the courage. Women go like, oh, you just said this was hard for you, and yet here you are doing it. Wow, you're courageous. You don't run from your fears. And again, you say the longer you're with someone, and even if it's just a casual relationship, the longer that goes on, eventually they find out everything. They kind of do, like, right?
Right. Yeah.
It's just too much effort. I think a lot of guys think that they have to hold frame forever. And it's too fucking hard, guys. I'm telling you. As someone who tried it for a long time, who has tried it for more than most of the people listening, it's not very easy to keep up you have one day where you're just fucking tired and you just can't be bothered playing games. That one fucking time you let the mask drop. And then, yes, if you've been playing with this mask or you've had this mask or this like holding frame the entire time, she goes like, whoa, like what? Is everything okay? Like what's changed? What the fuck? And that's not always a bad thing. Sometimes you can then grow from that, but it's inevitable that you'll have a day where you can't be bothered. Like you just can't fucking be bothered playing fucking games, and you want to be able to just have her come over and you go, yo, how was your week? Yeah, mine was pretty busy. I was a bit stressed. Like it wasn't a great week, but I'm glad you're here. Let's have sex. Like you just want to be able to fucking be yourself with someone. And I can't imagine, I don't think it's a very good long-term strategy. And I think a lot of people don't have a long-term strategy in mind when they do get into this stuff, playing games or not being completely integral or having that integrity, because I don't think they've thought far enough ahead.
I think something that I learned too in my marriage, like after a while, you learn that it actually does feel good to be vulnerable with another person, to have them support you. Like I broke down and cried many times with my wife, especially like going through the entrepreneur journey and having self-doubt.
Yeah, bro.
And having somebody there to basically pick you up. I always likened it to like I'm a warrior. I'll go out and slay a dragon for you. All I want to do is come
Yep.
back home and drop the sword, drop the shield, and you be there to support me. And that's
Yep.
amazing. That's an amazing gift that women can give you. But they don't.
It's
they
that
can
yin
nev-
and yang.
Yes. And they can't give it to you unless you're vulnerable, unless you open up, unless you drop the mask.
The thing is, they want to fucking. What do women say? What have women said since the dawn of fucking time? Men don't communicate. Men don't open up. Men won't let me in. And it's like, I've said this so many times. They're literally fucking telling you with their words. I give them full fucking credit for that. They're literally saying, this is what I would like. And then, people will come in and say, yeah, but they say one thing and they mean another. I think where people get confused with vulnerability is they will mistake vulnerability for complete helplessness. It's not that. That is not what we're talking about. Yes, I agree. Your job, generally speaking, for most of the time as the man, maybe it's not your job, but what you are proficient at is having your shit together. And so it's not about coming home and just being like, oh, I don't know what to do. Like, help me. I'm helpless. Please, please save me. Please, mistress, please do everything for me. Because she'll be like, what the fuck? Like, I want to help you, but I don't know what to fucking do now. Like, now I'm going to start fucking feeling fear and panic and stuff. So it's not about just completely falling apart, though it is fine if you do that from time to time. It's more a matter of like opening up and sharing your struggles. Like you said, I will go out and battle fucking dragons for you as long as I can come home and you will tend to my wounds. And then I can be a little softer around you than I am with other people. I can be more affectionate. I don't have to be a hard ass like I am with my friends. I can relax a little bit and you will be there for me. That's what every woman wants. It's what okay, maybe not everyone, but what most women want. It's what most guys want too. But I think they're operating from this place of fear of like, I'm not allowed to have that thing. And I've said this a million times in my content. Anytime you feel that fear, run towards it, like embrace it, overcome it, have the courage to at least experiment here. I think a lot of guys are so petrified of ever being, and I don't like the word vulnerable. I prefer the word, I don't know, there's got to be a better word than that. Open, honest. It's fucking honesty, man.
Yeah.
It's like saying what you're actually feeling.
Yes, it's sharing the experience that you're having.
Yeah.
Because you're not coming to say, these are my problems and I want you to fix them. You're coming and
Correct.
saying, this is what I'm feeling while I'm experiencing these problems. I'm still working to fixing them, but I need some help. I need some support. I can't do this on my own. I'm still going to move forward, but I need some help.
I'm looking up an article right now, see if I can pull it up in time. But Imogen, my girlfriend, wrote an article a while ago called, here you go, What Honesty is Like for a Girl from a Woman's Perspective. She also wrote another one called Imi's Thoughts on Being Alpha. And she's got some like really good quotes because she wrote an article about me talking about the exact concepts that we're talking about here. And one thing that she said is like, so here you go. He tells me all the time things he's scared about, things he struggles with, things that are getting him down, and things that worry him. This then has a huge impact on helping me feel comfortable being more vulnerable and, joining a partnership. Andy, by sharing Andy's struggles, he then embodies a strong and stoic masculine figure in my life because sometimes he admits that he's a fuck up. I know that he has struggles too. He reminds me that he wasn't always where he is right now. This has given me permission to suck in my own life. It's given me permission to open up, be honest about my flaws, and better accept the fact that I won't always be perfect in our relationship and in life. She goes on to say like a bunch of other stuff, and she's written a couple of articles on this concept. But the one thing that she keeps coming back to, like the one word that keeps coming up is like courage or confidence. Like every time she talks about me sharing my stuff, she's like, oh, look at the confidence to admit that you're terrified of something. And I think that's why I think what's happening is guys are just getting mistaken and saying like, oh, if you ever share your shit with a woman, she'll think you're a little pussy. It's like, no. Share, but also have some sort of plan.
Yeah.
So say I had a really hard day at work today. Can you give me a massage? Or I just want you to give me a cuddle. And she's like, sure, there you go. That's a plan. Like you're not helpless. Or share that you have some, you talked about entrepreneurial struggles. Brother, I've been there. Yeah, I know exactly that. You share like, I'm really fucking stressed about paying the rent. This is just, I don't fucking, sometimes I feel like I don't know how we're going to pay the rent, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to just keep grinding with my podcast. I'm going to do more content. I'm going to go even harder. We're going to get through this. And then that's you sharing. literally saying, I'm scared. I don't fucking know what to do, but here's my fucking plan. And so with that, she then sees your struggles and she sees that you always find a way to make it work. Or if you can't make it work, you will then go and ask other friends, or you will go and read books, or you'll research, or you'll try harder, or you'll do something to make it work. And she starts to see you as the person who has a plan, who has a solution to every problem. What is that? That's fucking masculinity. Versus the opposite, where every time she can see that you're struggling, you just go like, no, everything's fine, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. What does that look like? That looks like fucking cowardice. And I think a lot of guys think that that's strength and stoicism. No, it's not. It's cowardice. It's literally cowardice. Women think that. They're not going to tell, sometimes they will tell you that, but it's a fear of, I'm too scared to tell you what's going on. It's like, you look like a little fucking child who can't talk.
It also helps them to go on their journeys as well. So like, I really love that your tagline is like, you sure as hell can too, because when you are moving towards this goal that you have, and then you show that you have these fears, you have these insecurities, you have these doubts as you go, they realize like I'm a very self-driven person and like on top of my shit. And so in the beginning of my relationship with my ex-wife, she was like, I can't compare to you. Like, I can't do all the shit that you're doing. And I feel like less than. And so as I started to open up, I'm like, half the time, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Like, I'm just moving forward. I'm trying to do this.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, well, I mean, if you're insecure about it and, you know, you have these doubts, well, now I can probably do those sort of things too and still move forward. And so it helps not only like you develop, it also helps them develop alongside you.
Even further on that, brother, it's like you can then open up about your process. You can show her the process in action. You can say, here's what I do when I'm insecure. I go away and meditate. I read fucking Marcus Aurelius. I read this book, or I listen to the Daily Stoic, or I read these articles. You can actually open up and show her the process for how you deal with your struggles and you overcome your adversity. And then, yeah, she can go, oh, fuck, let me try that. Let me grab that and let me try that for myself. Like, some of the best stuff that Emmy has read and has learned from have been books like, she loved No More Mr. Nice Guy. That legitimately changed her life. She loves Marcus Aurelius. She gets so excited when I read her like Epictetus or any of the old like Stoics or even the old philosophers. Like I think you talked about
Socrates.
who'd you say before? Socrates.
Yeah.
With Socrates' quote, we didn't say it before, but I think it was, I know enough to know that I know nothing. Is that the general quote?
Yes.
Yeah. So she loves all that kind of stuff. And you will only ever share that with someone if, like, it's more relevant in the moment.
Yes.
Like, if you're struggling, and hell, if you're scared to, I guess if anyone is listening to this and they're like, guys, like, I don't know that I can just suddenly open up about my I've fucking held, everything in society has told me to be a strong stoic man. I don't know that I can just suddenly open up. Okay, fine. Here's how you do it. You go through some struggle or you go through some adversity, you overcome it, and then you fucking open up to her about it. Like post, after. So you go, you know, hey, honey, a month ago, or a girl that you're just casually dating, hey, a month ago, I was really struggling to pay the rent. I was kind of stressed. I'll be honest. I was really fucking stressed. So I made a plan. I did this. Here was my exact process. And now look, I can pay the rent. She's like, oh, that's fucking cool. That's still opening up. So even if you're fearful of opening up in the moment because you don't want to dump your problems on women, like, hey, it's not up to us to tell you to, you know, how you should run your life and whatever. But afterwards, you can open up.
Yeah,
you'll get just as much credit for that.
That's how I started with my ex-wife. I had originally, before I met her, started my weight loss journey. So like growing up, I didn't eat very well and was like, had reached, I think the top was like 205 or 210. And in college, I started to eat better, started to do weightlifting, was starting to bring that down. And I was very insecure about how I looked. I didn't appreciate, I didn't like the way I looked. I didn't like the way I fit my clothes. I didn't used to like take my shirt off when, you know, you go swimming or something because I was insecure. I had like little man boobs and I didn't want those anymore. And so I started going through that. Well, when I started dating her in college, I started bringing her along with me to the gym and she was a little insecure about her body. And I was like, hey, I used to be like that too. Like I didn't like how I looked. And just like you said, I opened up about the process. I was like, I started doing these different routines. So I started to teach her different lifts inside the gym. And then we started meal planning together. And I love that something that you talk about is like building something with the other person in a relationship. Like that's really the basis of what our relationship started with, was like us two building together. We were taking the same program in college doing architecture. So we had that. And then we also had this gym thing that we were doing and developing together. So we knew what the struggles of each person were. So when we opened up about them, it was really easy to relate to those struggles because we were doing it together. We were building something together.
Do you feel like that sort of process is something that you have more learning to do? I know we talked at the start of this podcast about being a student. Do you feel like, because 8 years with 8 years in a relationship is a long time, and regardless of how the outcome ended up, I never look at a lot of people look at a relationship and say, "Oh, you divorced, therefore it was a failure." And it's like, what the fuck are you talking
No.
about? How, do you feel like it was a success? Do you?
Absolutely. The person that I was and the person that she was at the beginning are completely different than the people we were at the end. We changed emotionally, physically, mentally, financially. Like everything was better off. Because we were in a relationship with one another. And we did that because we made each other better along the way. And so from that standpoint, and we're still friends, we still talk. So from that standpoint, I couldn't ask for anything more from the relationship. We reached a point that we wanted to go separate ways, like wanted different things in life. And we're realizing that, okay, our next goals in life that we want are going to be better served with actually us being separated. The next part of our development is us separated.
I feel like the fact that you're still friends and the fact that you both had that sort of very, we keep using the word, but very like honest and very like full of integrity conversation, which you have to be very honest to say, hey, I think we want to go separate ways. Like, hey, you know, I want you to be happy. If that's without me, then great. That's what I want.
Yeah.
I feel like that speaks to your relationship for sure. Like there obviously was a lot of kindness and goodness there.
And a practice that we did was having a weekly relationship walk. So we would spend 1 or 2 hours one day every week where we would just assess how the relationship is going. We'd talk about things that are going well, things that need fixed, and try and, problem solve during that time. And we did that for like 2 or 3 years. It came a little later, but we decided to get divorced during one of those relationship walks. So they were a moment that both of us were like completely honest. We took whatever feedback. We weren't trying to, have a fight or anything. It was like, okay, here's the reality of our relationship. Yeah. How can each one of us get better? What can we do to get better? And I think that was a practice that kept the relationship as strong as it was the entire time.
Yeah, brother. I call those weekly accountability check-ins. And I talk about the value of doing them with other guys, like similar to whatever your goals are. But I also have talked a million times about doing it with your partner. So Imogen and I do that every single Monday. We've got 20 different questions. And the questions will change over time depending on what you're working on. But it's essentially what you just said. It's like, how are you going? How am I going? What did you do for the last week? What did I do for the last week? What do we both want to do for next week? And then how's the relationship going? And how do we make the relationship better? Like, what are you not getting? What am I not getting? Are you making yourself unhappy? Because a lot of the time in a relationship, and you tell me if this came up, when you actually start investigating and start asking each other questions and diving deep into it, doing the work in the relationship, you realize that a lot of the unhappiness is like a complete misunderstanding, or it's like a story that you were believing. You started telling yourself a story of oh, she doesn't care about me because she always leaves dishes messy in the kitchen, and that means she doesn't respect me, and she doesn't. And you start concocting this story, and then when you actually inquire or have a conversation about it, she's like, oh, I didn't know that the dishes were important to you. I know you've asked me 5 times, but I didn't realize how important it was. Sure, I can clean the dishes. So did you find that there's a lot of misunderstandings that you investigate, and you're like, fuck me, I've been thinking you're a bitch for the last 2 weeks, and you're innocent. I was the asshole.
Yeah, 100%. So we had this rule during the week, if some major problem came up or disagreement came up, we would ask in the moment, can you talk about this now? And if it wasn't a good time, then we push that to the relationship walk.
So I love that, brother. I love that. Yeah, I love that.
So then we get to the day, and I'll come and I'll be like, okay, this is what happened. And the story that I'm telling myself is, and then I would say whatever it was. And then she would be like, that's not really what happened. Or, I don't really feel that way. She's like, it's actually not that big of a problem. And then you go, oh shit, I've been making this a big deal the whole week, and playing it in my head that it means this, and she's doing this thing to get at me. Then none of that was true. Yeah,
because at the end of the day, and this is where my philosophy, it's you and me on the same team, comes into things. At the end of the day, you're both on the same team. I always say every human being wants three things: to be loved, to be understood, and to be happy. And we all want exactly that. In a relationship, that's what we want. We want the other person to love us, to understand us, and we want to be happy. And now a lot of those things you need to give to yourself. Let's make that clear. Don't use a partner for happiness or to be understood or any of that. But that's ultimately what we want. We're all innocent, and yet we will concoct these huge stories of, like I said, she's a bitch because she didn't pick up her socks, or fuck man, she's out with her friends instead of me. That must mean that she's probably fucking cheating on me, like the red pill. And you'll concoct these stories, and then you actually ask the other person, and they're just like, whoa, fuck, no. And so it can be difficult sometimes, or it can be a little challenge. Or maybe it would say it's something that a lot of people haven't built into a habit, being on the same team, particularly in a relationship, but it makes it go so much smoother. And I love that you guys, like, once a week had those walks, as you call them, because, that's so fucking, I would just say mandatory for anyone listening who hasn't had a relationship or who's inexperienced. It's like, treat the other person like they're on your team, because ultimately they are. They want you to be fucking happy. What could be more on your team than that?
Yeah. One thing that I did after the relationship ended, I actually heard it on a podcast that they were mentioning, if you are still in good standing with your partner, you should go to them and get feedback about what you could have done better in the relationship. Just kind of get like a breakdown of the relationship. I was like, okay, that's fantastic, because I'm still in good standing. So I went to her and was like, what's 3 things that I did, or 3 behaviors that I had that, made the relationship miserable for you? And I think, like, asking those sorts of questions are very important, because again, you're making up some reality in your head, but in order to get a real truth, you have to have like somebody give you feedback. And it was a good exercise. There was one thing that I had I thought I may have been too controlling at times during the relationship. Mm-hmm. And I was like, yeah, she's definitely going to say that. And we started talking, and it blew me away, because she had been chatting with family and friends, after the divorce, and some of them saying, maybe Brandon was a little controlling. And she said, I wanted to slap him across the face when they said that, because that's not the way you were. She said, you led the relationship, and you provided structure, but it was never controlling. She's like, I always opted in. I always chose to do those things. You always left the option to me. And I was like, oh, I mean, that's like, because I was looking at controlling as a negative behavior, a negative personality trait. But when she frames it as, well, you were leading and you were providing structure for them, like, well, that's a very masculine practice. That's something that I would like to continue to do. So getting those perspectives, I think, are really important. Having her hold up a mirror for you in the relationship.
Yeah, and other people will always tell us, take a step back, even feedback in general, like from other people, or, you're a content creator, so am I, like, you will get negative comments. And like, for a while I would call those like haters, and I was like, oh, fuck the haters and stuff. And at some point I realized, like, no, this is like valuable feedback. It's just that I don't want to hear it. And so if you do ask, if anyone listening does ask an ex, or, even someone that you're currently seeing, hey, can I have feedback? You also need to be open to hearing what they say. And you might find that you want to get defensive and be like, no, that's not true. You're fucking wrong, stupid bitch. You don't know what you're talking about. Like, that might come up. If that feeling does come up, it is almost always, at least in my experience, because there's some truth there.
Yeah.
Like, there almost always is truth there. Because if someone says something that isn't true, and I've had plenty of comments that say something that isn't true, I'll read it and go, ha, that's funny.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt. Like, you just brush
funny.
it off. Yeah.
Yeah.
But when it hurts is when you're like, oh, there's actually something there, because you realize it in yourself, and that's why it hurts.
For sure. Were you guys sharing that stuff on the weekly walks that you were doing? Were you saying, like, here's something that I think you could do better?
Yes, all the time. And actually, something that I noticed about myself during those walks is I'm much more likely to notice the problems going on in the relationship, and like, here's how we're going to fix them. And so most of the time, I probably focused on the negative too much. Something that I really like about your content is you're like, bring some praise, bring some gratitude. And that towards the end of the relationship, I got a lot better at that. But towards the beginning, it was more of like, here's the problems going on. This is what we need to fix. Here's what we can do to do it. But on the flip side of that, like hearing the feedback, something that I would do is ask those sorts of questions like, what can I do better? How can I be a better husband? And then have her tell me, and then try and relay back what I just heard. So there's something called imago therapy, where basically you listen to the person talking to you and you let them go as much as they want. And whatever emotion is behind that, you just let them unload. You listen to it, and then you try and relay back what you just heard, the emotions and the content of what you just heard.
Yeah, I always talk about, like, look at the intent of what the person is saying. What are they actually... Because sometimes people will just, like, verbal diarrhea, especially in a relationship where they feel very emotional and stuff. And so they'll say, like, you never put the dishes away. You always leave the kitchen so messy, blah, blah, blah. And they might say all that. Let them say all that, like you're saying. And then I take a pause and try and take a step back and say, okay, why are they... This isn't about the fucking dishes. This has nothing to do with the dishes. Like, what are they actually trying to get across? And if you're not sure, you can ask. You can say, like, is this really about the dishes? Because we can talk about the dishes, but, like, is this that you just don't feel heard in the relationship? Or you feel like I always just steamroll over the top of you and do whatever the fuck I want? Like, sometimes Imogen or I will get upset about something and we'll be talking about it. And then you take a little bit of a break and you go, I don't even give a fuck about that. And like we're pretty good at this point after this many years at recognizing, like, we'll go to say something and then we'll be like, I wanted to tell you that I don't like that you always leave the microwave open and you never close the fucking door. But like, I realize I don't actually care about that. I think I'm still, I don't know, bothered by the fact that, if you want to get really deep on it, I think I'm bothered by the fact that I'm not God and I can't change the entire fucking universe to operate the way that I want. And I wish you would close the microwave door, and I wish that people would never cut me off in traffic, and I wish that everyone would smile at me, and I wish that no girls would reject me, and I wish that the sun would always shine, and that when I want it to be cloudy because I'm feeling a bit hot, the clouds would just come over. If you get deep enough, almost every unhappiness in a relationship or with anyone else is ultimately because you wish you were fucking God or something and you're not. And that can be helpful to realize, especially in a relationship, that half of the problems that you complain about, it's not about the other person. It's the fact that the other person ties in with everybody else, and everybody else isn't doing what you want. And this is the person right in front of you who's almost like the straw that broke the camel's back. You didn't pick up the dishes, so I'm going to just fucking unload on you because I'm pissed off that the world doesn't operate the way I want. So
yeah, that was,
and that's
like
stoicism.
Going back to the idea of like them holding up a mirror. It's usually like whatever they're doing holds up a mirror of your own insecurities. You figure out what your triggers are, and then if you dig into those, you realize, oh, this is actually something deeper. So like an example from my life, she used to like leave her clothes alongside the bed, and it would drive me freaking crazy. And I would tell her over and over again, like, hey, can we pick these up? Like, we got a closet. Can we just put them in the closet? And she's like, yeah, we can do that. And then she'd leave them all over again. And it was just because that's how she grew up. It just wasn't a habit that she was going to change. But the real problem was that, the reason it triggered me was because I had an insecurity of things being out of control, being disordered. I talked about earlier about things being in control, because that reminded me of being a kid and having complete chaos in my life. And I was a little kid. I couldn't control any of it. So now I'm trying to control my environment, have it be better. But it had really nothing to do with her and her leaving her clothes everywhere.
Yeah, man. Yeah, Byron Katie, who's one of my favorite, I call her a stoic. She's basically a stoic. She has a really good fucking point about stuff like this. About she talks about leaving socks on the floor, but the exact same thing you're talking about. She says our children or our partners, we'll just use the partners as the example. Our partners will show us what we haven't like actually worked through yet. And so they will continue to show us that, and they won't ever stop showing us that until we deal with what is underneath. And so you say, can you pick up your clothes? And she'll go, yeah, honey, of course I can do that. And then she's almost the perfect teacher. You just haven't learned yet. And she'll keep leaving those clothes, and you'll keep yelling at her, and she'll leave them and you'll yell. And some people even get into big fights over that. And all of this shit will keep happening until you have that realization of like, you know what? It's not about the fucking clothes. I don't want to go back to my childhood, where I felt like I had no control. I felt so helpless, fucking honey. I really felt like I had no fucking control. And I get reminded of that when you leave your clothes on the ground. And she'll go like, yeah, I knew it was that. Like half the time, your partner will literally say, yeah, I know that. And then it's almost like you're the last to know. Your partner is going to be the perfect teacher to you. She's trying to teach you. You said holding up the fucking mirror, and you're just the dumbass who's like, no, I'm not looking in the mirror. No, it's not about the mirror. It's you. It's you behind the mirror. It's not me. And so it all ends with a very stoic and peaceful philosophy that I really like, which is if you want the clothes picked up, then you pick up the clothes and do it with joy. Don't do it with bitterness and like, oh, well, she fucking leaves the clothes on the floor. Be like, man, I really love that I have control now. I love that I don't, and you don't have full control, but like, I love that I have, quite a bit of control, and I get to choose if my house is clean. And if she makes a mess, hey, look at all the power that I have. Look at my masculine power or my power as a human being. I can pick the clothes up and make it clean. And no matter how many times she makes it dirty, I'm going to be there to make him clean because that's what I like. And she doesn't really care about it being clean. Otherwise, she'd make it fucking clean. And so you pick the clothes up every day. This is what I've learned to do with the dishes and with Imogen leaving the microwave of the door open every single time she, and it's like, hey, I'm going to close that and I'm going to have a smile on my face because it feels nice to have a kitchen that's in some sort of order. And funnily enough, when you do this enough times, they see you picking the fucking clothes up off the ground and they go, oh, let me help you with that. And then they start picking the clothes up too. And so again, it's like they wanted to do that. You just didn't go first. And so if you want the clothes picked up, you go first. Otherwise, you're being a hypocrite. You're not picking the fucking clothes up while saying, oh, she should pick them up. But it's her clothes. It's like, go first then. Show her what to do. Take that masculine lead.
I would also add to that, when they start doing it, if they've only ever done it once, hit it with praise. Everybody likes to be praised for what they're doing. And eventually it will become more of a habit. They're like, oh, he really, really enjoys, when I pick up the clothes, rather than like bitching about it all the time, doing a negative all the time. Start giving the positive more often, and they're more likely to do it.
Yeah, brother, because people don't think about that. They're like, we just think about things from our very like solipsistic point of view. And if anyone doesn't know what solipsistic means, it just means where you haven't thought about other people's point of view. And we're all solipsistic at times, right? We only have our own frame of reference. You've never been anyone except for you. And so people will only look at it from their own solipsistic point of view, and they'll say, well, she's annoying me with the clothes. Like, I just wish she'd pick them up. Like, here's what I fucking want. I want the clothes picked up. And it's like, but what does she get out of that? She has to put in effort that she doesn't want to put in. What is she getting out of that? She gets nothing. And so that's why I always phrase things in a positive way. I say, hey, it would mean so much to me if you picked up the clothes. Or like, something like that. And then, as you say, when she does pick them up, I appreciate that so much. That's really fucking amazing, baby. Listen, hey, come here. Like, and look into her eyes. This really legitimately means a lot to me. Like, honestly, thank you. And then you can tell her the fucking story of your childhood if you want to, but hitting with that praise. So then, like you say, now she knows, oh shit, when I pick up the clothes, I get something out of this. Now it's a two-way fucking value exchange. He gets a nice ordered bedroom. I get to feel really fucking good, like I've given him something nice. I get to tell myself the story, like she gets to tell herself the story of like, I'm the woman who really looks after her man. Like, I'm really good at looking after my man. I make my man happy. I'm a really good woman. Like, she gets all the fucking value of that. And so that's where it comes back to, again, treating each other like you're on the same team. Rather than saying, you're the enemy, you pick up the clothes, give me what I want, which means you have to lose. It's like, no, baby, how can we win together? How can you feel good? Like, how can I make you feel good with lots of praise? And how can I get the thing that I want? And again, sometimes that is just you pick up the clothes and now you feel good and she doesn't lose anything. But yeah, I love that. The praise is fucking mandatory, man. It really is.
And this works not only, in a long-term relationship, but this works in the casual relationships that you're having as well. Like, if they text you back really quickly with like just logistics and you really like that style, like give a little praise to that. If you open up to them and be honest and they're honest and back, like give a little praise to that, because then they'll continue to keep doing it.
Yeah, people are so, and this is where I think, and again, we're not just here to shit on the red pill. The red pill's done a hell of a lot for me, I'll be honest. And it sounds like quite a bit for you too. But I think people in the red pill will go, or some people will go so far to the extreme of like, never say sorry, never give praise. Mate, I've seen people that say, you shouldn't walk up to women and say, hey, you're really cute. I'm Andy. You shouldn't give them a compliment right off the bat because that's validating them, and like women get enough validation, and it's like, yeah, fucking heaven forbid you make someone feel good. Hey, like, but it can go so far in that extreme that I think a lot of people are very hesitant to give praise because they see it as weakness. They see giving praise to another human being, which is kind of sad when you think about it. Like, giving praise or giving something, giving value to someone else, they see that as like weakness. Like you had to lose in order to give praise. And it's like, only if you tell yourself that story. Like, what does praise cost you? Four joules of energy. I don't know how much energy you burn, like saying words, right? But it's fucking nothing. Like 1 fucking milliliter of soda, like fucking 2 calories. I don't know how little energy it takes to say, hey, really good job. I really appreciate that. And if anything, if you actually start practicing this, you see that she then feels really good. And that makes you feel good, unless you tell yourself a story of like, oh no, I made a woman feel good. Oh, now the feminists win. Like, if you don't tell yourself that story, she feels good. And then what's she going to do? She's going to start fucking praising you. It might take her a little while. She might need to work up the courage. She might not have ever done it before, but she starts praising you and starts doing nice things for you, or at least continues the behaviors that you praised her for. And now you both win. And that's where I think a lot of, I'm not even going to just say the red pill or men in general, because women do the same thing, brother. They really do. A lot of people in dating just see the other gender as that, the other. And it's almost like, well, I can't give him sex because then he'll just expect it all the time. And it's like, fuck me. Heaven forbid you make him, heaven forbid I finish a fucking sentence, but heaven forbid you make a man's fucking wiener feel good for 2 seconds, right? And so it's not just men doing it, but I think both genders get very combative.
Agreed.
So, divorce, come out the other side, been with a few women, 10 women, very honest, and you're feeling like that's really, working for you, which it sounds like, to be honest, you already had a template of honesty and stuff. Is honesty something you embrace like outside your dating life? Are you a very honest person? Like, is that something that serves you outside of that?
Yeah, it's one of my highest values. And particularly like not just telling the truth. I see honesty in the way that Jordan Peterson puts it of like,
don't tell. Yep.
Yeah. Like don't tell a lie, and basically putting yourself fully out there. Like even if you're withholding information, like that's still a lie. Like being as authentic or in integrity as you can. I try and apply that to the rest of the areas of my life. And it's very difficult to start doing that. Particularly, I think one of the most challenging areas for me has been sharing ideas or sharing opinions when they don't necessarily go with the rest of society. Like, for example, we just had the pandemic, and I didn't think it was okay that, people have to be mandated to get the vaccine. But I didn't speak up like during that time when it was going on. And that felt very cowardice. Didn't feel like it was an integrity. And the way that leads eventually, like if we go to Nazi Germany, people just went along with what was being fed and eventually bought into that. But all it would have taken is a few people being truthful about what they believed and about what was going on. So I try and do that in other areas of my life. I fall short all the time, but it's something I keep trying to practice.
Yeah, man. At the end of the day, you're human. And I wrote an article called Honesty is an Ideal You Work Towards. And the whole point was because I felt like I'd written a lot of articles and stuff about being honest. And some people were almost using that to beat themselves up and saying, like, oh, man, I accidentally lied. A girl said to me, are you seeing any other girls? And I said, no. And then, I went away for a week and then I texted her and I said, look, I lied. I'm sorry. I am seeing girls. Like, what the fuck is wrong with me? Why did I lie? And I'm like, brother, like, look at you facing your fears and actually reaching. That was probably really fucking hard for you to reach out to her and say, I lied. Here's the actual truth. And so give yourself credit for cut yourself some slack for being human, and then give yourself credit for even just trying. Because I still lie. I try my best not to, but sure, hey, I'm a liar. I'm a human. That's kind of what we do. I have a tattoo that literally says speak truth, and yet I still tell lies sometimes. That's what the tattoo is there for, to remind me. And so I think it's more the pursuit. The same thing with Stoicism. Stoicism is a beautiful fucking analogy here. All the Stoics, like Marcus Aurelius being the best example, it's not like he wakes up and he's 40 and he's like, all right, cool, I'm Stoic now, sweet, I'm good now, nothing's going to bother me. It's like, no, it's a daily fucking pursuit. Byron Katie talks about this as well with her version of stoicism, which she calls the work. She says, eat the work for breakfast every single day. Wake up every day and you do the fucking work. You do your, meditation. You do your self-analysis. You figure out what you want in a relationship. Every week you go and you do your walk, or you do your accountability check-in, or you just ask each other, are you happy? Am I happy? What do we want to improve? And so I think, I can't remember where I was going with this, but essentially, this is a daily pursuit, and honesty is something that you work. It's like a beautiful goal. It's like a mountain that you never fully climb. You know what I mean? Like, and you don't have to climb it. And you certainly don't beat yourself up because one day you had a slip, or one day you were tired and you weren't fully honest, or someone asked you a question that you weren't prepared for and you didn't know what to say and you freaked out in the moment and you told a lie, because that's easier. That's what we do. It's a habit. Of course, you're going to go with the easy answer sometimes.
A lot of times I'll catch myself in social situations of like, I'll do a small lie, or like it's not exactly the full truth. And in that moment, I'm just trying to be in the conversation. And so I'll say it, and then I'll think about it later, like after I'm back home or whatever. And I was like, I said this thing, but it really wasn't actually true. And I try and not beat myself up there. I just try and take a mental note of it. Like, okay, next time, try and, tell your actual truth. So like a good example of that, I get a little insecure sometimes about, again, being different than other people. So like I eat mostly carnivore, animal-esque diet.
My boy's on carnivore. I got a couple of mates on carnivore.
And then I do intermittent fasting, but my eating window is earlier in the day, so I stop eating at like 2 p.m. Well, when you go out and do like social events or networking or whatever, they're usually in the evening, and especially if they're like a networking dinner. So then I go to the restaurant and I'm sitting there and I'm like, I'm not going to order food. And I have to explain that every time. And sometimes when I'm explaining that, like the actual truth of it doesn't fully come out the right way. And in that moment, I'm like, that's not actually what I meant. But, we're just going with the social situation. So when I get home later, I'm like, okay, you could have said it this way. Try and, be confident in who you are, living in your values. And so when I go out to the next one, I can be a little better about that, about expressing my values, about being the person that I am.
Yeah, man. And I like to look at it again in a positive way. So rather than, because a lot of people will beat themselves up and say, why did I just fucking tell a lie there? Why did I do, what's wrong with, like, that kind of negative feeling? I like to look at it like this. Okay, next time I'm going to practice the truth, because how do I feel when I tell the truth? I feel really good. Right. I feel like I'm in lockstep with my higher fucking frequency, or whatever weird Joe Rogan way you want to say it. I'm in vibration with the universe. But I feel like I'm a person of integrity, and that feels good. And so rather than saying, man, I lied, this is bad, what's wrong with me? You say, man, isn't it fucking cool that next time I'm going to get a chance to feel that like really good integrity and that nice feeling of like, I just told the truth. Fuck, I can't wait. I'm excited. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to practice telling the truth. And if I fail, that's okay. I just didn't get to feel good. But I can practice that more and get to that point, rather than, oh my God, I didn't tell the truth. That's bad. I'm wrong. I'm stupid. Why did I do this? So it's about climbing higher, rather than, I think a lot of people look down and go like, oh, fuck, I don't want to do that. And it's like, we're not looking down, guys. We're trying to look up. One of the things that you wrote, because you wrote this big long post on my forums, and you said that a book that, hey, I'm going to get really excited when I read this out, a book by Byron Katie, who's probably my favorite fucking author at this point in time. One of her books is called I Need Your Love. Is That True? How to Stop Seeking Love, Approval, and Appreciation and Start Finding Them Instead. And you said this book really seemed to help you with realizing when you were seeking validation and approval from, I'm guessing, not just women, but other people in general, and feeling like, oh, I need love, or you can go further than that. I need sex, or I need, entertainment, or I need support, or I need like whatever else. And you work on giving that to yourself. So do you have an example, like, and you wrote a couple of examples and I've got them here, but like, is there an example that really stands out to you? Like a moment where maybe you found yourself wanting validation or approval or sex or love or just anything from someone else, and then you thought, no, wait, what if I give this to myself? And what did that actually look like?
Yeah. So this has been definitely something recent that I've been working on, especially like I just got out of, being with somebody for 8 years. She was definitely giving some validation during that time. And now I'm on my own. So there's nobody else here. I have to do that for myself all the time. And so I was noticing that sometimes when I would go on these dates, that I would be seeking some sort of validation from the girls. When like I started doing cold approaches, like it felt fucking amazing to have a girl be like, tell me that I was attractive, or like you're doing a good job, and getting that validation feeling. But what I really wanted was to be able to go and do the cold approaches, and it didn't matter the outcome.
Yep.
That was happening. Like I could validate myself. A really good example, though, outside of the dating arena is I do a men's group with a group of guys, a group of entrepreneurs, bi-weekly, and we just kind of talk about things that are going on in our lives, our emotions, how we're dealing with them. And I would notice that sometimes I was coming to these groups because I really respect these guys. I really want, good feedback from them. They're doing amazing things, and I want to be like just as good as them, or want to have this amazing thing to tell them. And so I'd like start to work up this like story or this thing that I was going to tell them at the meeting, because I wanted some sort of validation. I just wanted them to say, hey, you're doing a good job, which is like basically what my mom did when I was a kid. Like, you're doing all this hard work. Good job. And I'd went to one of these meetings, and I was going to start like telling my story. And I was like, actually, like, all I really want, guys, like I've been working my fucking ass off for the last 2 weeks. Like I've been doing all this dating stuff. I've been working on my startup. I'm not seeing any traction. Like nothing's happening. I just want to be told like I'm doing a good job. Like you're doing good work. And instead of like telling them the whole story that I had planned, I was just like, I wanted to be told I'm doing a good job. So just asking for what I needed there from them.
Brother,
Yeah.
That is the first thing. Like when people join my coaching program, there's a Facebook group that's part of the program, right? And there's all the people that are in the coaching program. The first like introduction post, it's like a sticky post that people have to read. It says, "Tell us what you want. Like tell us what you need from us. And if you need a push, say that. If you need a bit of praise, say that. If you need to be told that you're doing a good job, say that. If you need us to say, come on, pussy, you got this. Like, you can do more. You got this, brother. Like, we can give you that. But you're only going to get that if you actually ask for it." And Byron Katie, funnily enough, she talks about this quite a lot in, when she's doing like counseling sessions with other people. She'll say, if you're sitting there like trying to inadvertently get validation, or like you're trying to almost like nice guy your way to it, right? Like trying to be sneaky. Let me tell this cool story of all the stuff that I've done because I want them to pat me on the back. If you want someone to say nice things to you, like people will do crazy things to try and sneak their way into the validation or the, praise or whatever it is that they want. And she always says, if you want your mother to tell you that she loves you, or if you want, your friends to say that they're proud of you, just say, can you please say that you're proud of me? And sometimes they will say, yeah, I'm proud of you. And you're like, okay. And sometimes they won't say that because they'll be like, I'm not saying that. Like, I'm not proud of you. And then that's them being a perfect fucking teacher for you.
And that's when you also have to stop and recognize, okay, you wanted them to say good job, or like they're proud of you. And why do you want them to say that? Because you're doing all this amazing work. Well, can you recognize that for yourself? Can you tell yourself good job? Can you be proud of yourself?
Yep. And you're eventually, here's another thing to think about. If you're working on, let's say you're working on your physical appearance and your dating life, right? At some point, you're going to get to a point, or your whole entire goal, right, is to get to a point where you're happy with yourself and your dating life. Like that's what you're ultimate. You want to eventually get to a point where you're happy and you're competent, you're confident, you feel like you're very happy with where you are. And so that's you basically saying, I want to be happy with myself. And so I always say, and Byron Katie says, why not skip the middleman and just work on that now? Like if you want to be happy with yourself, there are ways to do that. Here's one of them. Get out a piece of paper and write down 50 things about yourself that are likable, 50 reasons why you like yourself. If you can't think of 50 reasons, go and ask some family and friends, go and do some Googling. Like there are ways to get 50, but there you go, 50 things. Another one, go look in the mirror and look into your own eyes and say, I love you. That might be very fucking difficult. Keep doing that every day for a month and then see if you fucking feel good. I promise you will. You can also look back at your past life and where you are now. And if there is some progress, and there's always progress, but write down all the progress that you've made. Hey, you know what? Actually, I'm doing okay. You can read books like You Can't Afford the Luxury of a Negative Thought. There's a million different ways that you can give yourself that acceptance or validation, if you want to call it that, And so start giving yourself that stuff now, because it makes it a hell of a lot easier. We're talking about self-confidence here. It makes it so much easier to then go out and talk to women. If you think to yourself, I'm doing a pretty good job, it's so easy to walk up. Well, it's not easy. It can be so easy to walk up to a woman if you know that you're doing a good job and you're happy with yourself and you're like, yeah, I have a lot to offer. Like, maybe I'm not perfect. I got a long way to go. Maybe I'm still fat. Maybe I don't dress very well. Who cares? I'm okay. I'm doing an all right job. You know, I'm sticking in there. At least I'm confident enough to actually try. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. I'm a complete train wreck, but I'm trying. That's way easier. With that energy, that's way easier to talk to a woman versus, oh, I suck and women will never like me and I'm not doing a good job. So there's a lot of positive benefit to giving yourself these pep talks. We're not just saying it because we're jerking off and going like, oh, it feels good to feel good. No. Like, it literally makes you more productive, which is what most people say that they want. So
yeah. And in the dating arena, like when you're going on these dates, it helps with you getting laid because you're not going there and being super needy and like, I need you to like me. Rather, you go there and you're like, I'm pretty comfortable with myself. I'm confident with myself. I can validate myself. Like, I'm doing a good job. I bring a lot to the table. If you say, yes, you want to come back to my place, awesome. If you don't, well, there'll be another one. I can do this again.
Yeah. And that's where I think one of my favorite things that the Red Pill has ever said is they talk about the value of abundance mentality, and they very much call it abundance mentality, not abundance. Because abundance can be taken away from you at any point in time. And if you don't understand the difference, guys, what I mean is, if you were just caring about abundance, which a lot of people do, mate, a lot of people will say, oh, I got to have 5 women that I'm sleeping with at once. That's you chasing abundance. What happens, and this does happen in the numbers game, and what happens if you don't have any women you're sleeping with? Suddenly you've lost all your power. You've lost all your strength. You've lost all your self-love. You have nothing now. Until 5 women decide to say yes to you, you aren't enough, is what you're essentially saying. But the power of abundance mentality, which is where you say, even if I don't have any women right now, I know who I am and I know who I'm working on being, and I know that there will be women out there who will like me. And if there's not, fuck it, then I'll just get really good at making money, or I'll get really good at hobbies, or I'll make a lot of friends and I'll have a kick-ass life. Like, there's an abundance of things that I can do that will bring me joy and peace and excitement and all of that shit. And even if I had none of that, I have myself. I can go deep on myself like the Stoics did. And so there is an abundance of joy and happiness and peace out there in the world. That's abundance mentality. And when you have that, if 5 women aren't sleeping with you and you have no women that you're sleeping with, you at least understand, well, hey, I got a lot of other shit that like isn't that. So I really love that the Red Pill pushes that. I think sometimes it gets misunderstood and people think they mean abundance. I see a lot of my audience do that as well. They're like, oh, I got to sleep with 10 women. And it's like, do that if you want to, but you don't get to say that you're not enough until you've done that. And I see a lot of guys, a lot of my coaching clients too, will come to me because they've seen all the cool testimonials and the exciting, like, this guy had a threesome and got laid with 10 women. And they'll see that and they'll go, okay, I'm not good enough until I've done that. And I'm like, brother, what are you fucking talking about? Are you not good enough right now? Like, you're good enough now. And if you want to do that as well, you can. Like, because that's fun and exciting. But did you feel like that at the end of your divorce? Was there this pressure on you to, I have to get a certain number of lays? Or was it very much like relaxed from the start? Like, no, I'm just going to see what happens.
When I got divorced, it was more starting from an area of self-doubt. So I just had, a woman tell me that she doesn't want to be with me anymore. And it was a long relationship. As we got towards the end of the relationship, like, sex was not as often. So I had this insecurity that, like, okay, maybe I'm not good looking and maybe there's something wrong with me. And I'm going to have to try and figure these things out and do some work on myself to make those things better. And so when I was going to even like the first date and the first lay that I had after the divorce, I was like super happy that I had a process to be doing, because it kind of took away like, okay, I don't know how to do these things. Like, I'm just going to follow these steps. And there's plenty of other people that have gotten laid following these steps. So I can just kind of use these as training wheels and do that. But I didn't really have a belief that like I could actually pull a woman back. And so I went on that day. I think it was 2 or 3 weeks after the divorce. And I think it was my 3rd date. And so the other 2 dates, like I didn't have anything successful. And so I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. I go on this first date, have probably 30 minutes in, and I'm like fucking shaking. Like, okay, now I'm going to say, hey, do you want to come back to my place? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, this stuff actually works. Like, I can actually do this. And like having her come back, we had amazing sex. I was like, oh, maybe I could do this. Maybe I'm actually a guy that, has some value. And I think like you can start with abundance, but it's much easier to like go through it once and know what the process is and be like, I can keep doing this process again. And that to me gives me that like abundance feeling, like knowing that I can go through this process and I can get better at this process. Like with each one of my lays, they've been better, and like I've broken down each one of the parts of this process and realized, okay, there's skills that I need to learn at each one of these things, and I can get better at those skills. Like it's I just have to put in the work to do that. Uh, Knowing that I can do that work, knowing that I can learn these things, knowing that I can go through this process over and over again, that's what helps give me abundance. Like, okay, I didn't get this one girl, I can just apply the process and get another one.
Yeah, you're talking about trust. It's like, and not even trusting in the process, because a lot of people listening, they're like, but how do I know? It might not work for me because I'm Asian or I'm short or I'm like whatever, limiting belief you might have. It's not so much about trusting in the process, though that does help. There's a reason I have so many coaching testimonials, and, that my motto is, if I can do it, you sure as hell can too, because that does help you trust. But it's about trusting in, I don't know, just like trusting in the fact that you won't quit. And if you're not 100% sure of that, trust in the fact that there are at least a hell of a lot of different things that you can try to try and achieve whatever your goal is, and that you're at the start of your journey, and that maybe if you just try, one or two of them might work and you might eventually get there. It's at least, if you can't even trust, it's at least then not telling yourself something that is a lie. So don't say, I can't get laid and I know that for sure. And it's like, how the fuck do you know that? Like, have the humility to admit that you're a fucking newbie who doesn't know anything because you literally have said that this is something you're inexperienced at. And I see a lot of people that have sort of made up their mind, or they've told themselves that they've made up their mind, but they have so much doubt. Because if you've made up your mind, you don't sit there and argue with someone. You don't sit there and you've already made up your mind. You just leave.
I think it also, if you can break down the goal to something smaller that you have confidence you could do, like instead of I'm going to get laid, or seeing some of your stuff, like I'm going to have 200 lays, I'm going to have these amazing threesomes. Like, okay, let's actually just break this down. You don't believe you can get your first lay. What do you believe you can do? You believe you can go take pictures? I think I can go take pictures. So then you take that step. You're like, oh, that wasn't that hard. And then you look at the next step. What is it? Okay, I got to actually make a profile. I think I can do that. And that, I think I got to text these girls. I think I can do that. And you keep doing those small little steps of like what you think you can do. And before you know it, you're on the date and you're like, okay, now I can maybe have to take a bigger leap like I did, like actually asking the girl back. But then I did it and I was like, okay, I can do that. And you just keep adding those on to each other.
Yeah, brother. This is why I'm always talking about taking baby steps, and, my favorite book, The Slight Edge, and why I say the only things that matter for any goal is give yourself permission to suck at the start, take little baby steps every single day, and then don't quit. That's it. And so it's not like you have to have these massive leaps of like, oh, I'm a virgin, let me lose my virginity. Or, hey, I currently have no fucking money and I live with my parents, but let me start a business. Like, you don't have to think that far ahead. It's, I've talked about this in a million different ways. A recent video I did called Stop Looking at the Mountain. Like, don't look at the massive mountain that you're trying to climb. Just look down at your feet and how are you going to take that next step? Jordan Peterson talks about this a lot, and he has a program called his Future Authoring Program, which is basically his like template or his guide for you to figure out what you want from life and how you're going to achieve that. And he sort of holds your hand through it. And one of the questions he asks is, you set your goal and then you say to yourself, how do I break that down into such a small goal that I will do it? So the way that you ask yourself that is, let's say you decide I want to go to the gym, and you say, okay, and I've said this in fucking videos, if you want to start going to the gym, your first mission is just to walk into the gym and then walk out immediately. Literally walk in there, walk out. Then the second mission is walk there, talk to the receptionist, pay for entry to the gym, walk around the gym once, and then go home. And then the second time, stay in the gym for 15 minutes and then go home. I had to do this myself because I was so fucking scared of the gym. I literally had to just sit in the gym for a bit and then go home. Like I couldn't fucking work out. And so Jordan Peterson says, with those baby steps, you ask yourself, can I do this? Like, can I just go to the gym? And then will I do this? Because he says there's a big difference between can I do it? Because everyone goes, oh, sure, I know I could lose my virginity. And it's like, but will I actually do it? And then you're like, no, I'm probably going to stay comfortable like I am right now. And so then you keep breaking it down until the answer to that question of will I do it is yes. Yes, I know I will do this. Yes, I could walk around outside for 5 minutes and just look at women but not talk to any. Yes, I will do that. Sure, I will do that. That's your next fucking step. And in gathering the evidence that you are capable of doing that, and Jordan Peterson talks about this in his book 10 Rules for Life, in gathering the evidence that you can do that one little baby step, like you can walk to the gym and then immediately come home. You can walk around outside and look at some women. And if you can't do those things, break it down even more. When you show yourself that you can do that and you start gathering the evidence, you start getting a little bit cocky. Like you literally say, okay, well, I can sit in the gym. I can stand around in the gym for 10 minutes. Fuck, you know what? I'm feeling a little bit cheeky. I'm feeling a little bit cocky. I might pick up the dumbbells next time I'm in there. You know what? I'm going to pick up the dumbbells. Look at me. I'm a big fucking confident alpha male. I'm going to pick up the dumbbells. And you get in there. You like gently grab the dumbbells. You're holding them. You're like, is anyone looking? No one's looking. Okay. Do a little bicep curls with your little, 2-kilogram dumbbells. And then you put them down. You're like, okay, I'm going to run home now. You run home, wipe the sweat off your head. You're like, I did it. I worked out. And then you start getting more and more confident. And you go, fuck, man. Maybe I could get a personal trainer. And before you know it, you've gathered up the confidence to start really going for your goal. But you're right. I think a lot of people terrify themselves and scare themselves off because they say, oh, I got to do this big scary thing. I've got to have threesomes. Like they're basically like, I have to climb fucking Mount Olympus on my first attempt of self-improvement. And it's like, no, brother, my first attempt of self-improvement, and you tell me if you were the same, my first attempt at self-improvement was something like, I have to just my first attempt at self-improvement was when I was really fucking overweight. And I was like, I want to just start walking more. And it kind of went from there. So how was your...
I was exactly the same thing. So I first started with like my weight loss journey. And literally I would just walk around the block. And then it was around this high school and they had like the child play sets and whatever. And so I would go and do pull-ups. Like I couldn't even do a pull-up. When I started, tried to go do pull-ups on this thing. And I did that for a while. Like I just walked around and then eventually I could do a few pull-ups. And then eventually I went to the actual gym and started working out and I could do plenty of pull-ups now. But before when I started, like couldn't even do one.
Yep. I couldn't do a pull-up. I couldn't do a push-up, even with my knees on the ground, like women push-ups. I couldn't do one. Yeah. And I was like, holy shit, something is wrong with me. Like women are supposed to be able to do this and I couldn't do this. And so I had to humble myself even further. And I found ways of doing push-ups with basically like negative push-ups. So I'd have my knees on the ground. I'd start in the top position and then I'd just let myself like fall onto the ground. And I would literally smash my face into the ground. I was like, okay, well, I can at least do like 3 of these. And then, you keep building that up and I would change the angle. Like you can do a push up against the wall. Like, so you're basically slightly vertical like that. But breaking these things down, breaking these habits or these goals, into more manageable parts. Really what we're talking about here is humility. And a lot of people don't like that. A lot of people are like that. It's funny because they're in a position where they don't have the goal that they want. They haven't started working on it. They're a complete newbie. Like they've never done it, but they're like, I'm too good to start at the bottom. It's only caviar for me, sir. I'm actually homeless and I haven't eaten in a week, but I only accept caviar. Like it's basically that. It's like I'm not going to start at the bottom. No, why would I do push-ups with my knees on the ground? Like no, that's pathetic. That's weak. And it's like where you are right now is below that. So that's technically better than you. You're just too scared to admit it. So how did you humble yourself at the start?
I do really good at breaking things down into these steps. And then when I come to something that I don't believe that I can do, it's probably because I don't know how to do it. I don't have the knowledge for it yet. And so I realized that there's something that I need to learn here. So, in your example, when you can't do the push-ups yet and you had to learn a different way to do push-ups so you could start building up that's what I had to do in the beginning of this. Like I didn't have very good dating skills. And so having like your guide in the beginning broke all these things down and like, okay, I learned these different steps. But even within that, there was parts that I wasn't very good at, like texting. I was terrible at texting women. Like going and having conversations with women on these dates. Wasn't very great at that. And so I had to come to the forum and be like, hey, this is where I suck. These parts. Are there any things that like helped you guys that, you used in order to get better at these things? And started just asking for resources or different ways that I could be learning that. Then I applied those skills, got a little better, and could keep going to the next step and find, oh, I don't know what I'm doing here, and keep going forward.
Yeah, because one of the things you wanted to talk about, before we set this podcast up, you actually said, I want to talk about, I'll just read it out. Whatever goal you wish to achieve in life, there will be two things that hold you back: skills, as in you have to know what actions to take and how to achieve that goal, and then belief, like believing that you can actually take those actions and you're capable. I feel like we've talked a fair bit about belief here, and so now we're sort of moving on to skill. I had this realization. It was when I first wanted to lose weight, where I was like, hang on, if I don't know something, can't I just Google it? And it seems like now I laugh, but the number of people that will leave a comment on my YouTube or something, or they'll post on the forums, and my first answer, and sometimes I'll say it to them in a nice way, but I'll say like, mate, have you tried Googling this? Like, and this isn't me being a smartass. There's like a massive resource there of like basically the entire history of human knowledge that you could just type. Is that not the most amazing thing ever? But I think people don't know that it's there. As weird as that might sound, it's like they've never actually asked themselves like, wait, is there an answer to this? And I think it's just again, this is where trust comes into it. And you have to show yourself that you can trust, but just trust that there is a solution to every single problem. And it probably already exists on Google. And somebody else has probably already gone through the same thing you're struggling with. Even if you tell yourself that you're a special snowflake, like, oh, but like these guys both have fucking facial hair and I can't grow facial hair. Therefore, I couldn't do anything that they can do. And it's like, okay, Google, hang on, my phone just popped up when I said Google. Shut up, Google. So Google search, is there anyone with no facial hair who's gotten laid? Or no facial hair, how to get laid? Asian man, how to get laid? Bald, how to get laid? And see if someone else has gone through the same struggle as you. And even in the rare cases that you can't find someone who's the exact perfect snowflake like you are, find someone who's close enough, or even someone who's not close enough, but then adapt. And so, for instance, Andy, me, I'm 6'2", 6'1", 6'2", something like that. So if you tell yourself a story of like, oh, therefore I can't get laid because I'm short, despite all the fucking testimonials and interviews I've done with short guys. But if you tell yourself I can't get laid, Andy's advice won't work for me because I'm short, stop. And instead of just discounting everything, say, okay, what would I have to do differently, if anything at all? And the answer is like usually nothing. But like, what would I have to do differently as a short guy compared to what Andy's done? Okay, well, maybe Tinder wouldn't work as well for me because I'm shorter, which isn't true. But like, maybe it wouldn't work as well. Maybe I go outside. Maybe I wear some height increasing shoes. Maybe I just talk to girls that are shorter than me. Maybe I Google how to be confident as a short guy and I start working through that. Maybe I take, I don't know, fucking improv classes or stand-up comedy classes so that I can work on my social skills. Maybe I start going to like Toastmasters and, like public speaking places and I start networking and learning how to talk to other people. Maybe I go and hit the gym. Like Andy doesn't have a great body. I don't have a great body. So maybe I will, as a short guy, make my body fucking 5 times better than Andy's. So what I lose in height, I'm going to kick the fucking shit out of him in terms of body. And so everything I'm saying here is start looking for solutions or start Googling. Or if you don't even know, you don't have to have the solutions, but just type in Google, short guy, how to get laid, and find the solution. So it's about trusting that there probably is a solution out there, even if you don't know what it is. And being humble enough to not tell a lie of like, no, I know there's no solutions. Well, have you looked? Well, I tried talking to 5 women and they all said they had a boyfriend. So therefore women don't like short guys. And you're like, that's not fucking trying.
Yeah. You have to have a lot of self-awareness of like what your exact problem is. And then having a little bit of trust, a little faith that somebody in the past has probably had this problem too. And they probably have some sort of solution that you can go look at that solution and break it down to see how it would work for you. And you may look at their solution and be like, yeah, they're not exactly like me, So then you go and look for other models of people that are different or more like you. And maybe you start taking bits and pieces from the different models to actually fit the way you are. That's like the value for me of like going on the forums is there's all these guys that are sharing their journeys and their stories. And you can go in their logs and be like, okay, I really like how they do this thing. And they're kind of like me. So I'm going to go try it out. I'm going to have a little faith. I'm going to go test it and try it out. If it works for me, fantastic. I'll keep integrating that into my model. If it doesn't, then I go and try and find something else. I keep searching for a model that works for me. And this works for like super small problems. And I also think it works for really large global problems. So the startup that I'm building is focused on educating people about to get skills to solve big challenges, poverty, climate change, da, da, da. We don't exactly have a good model in the past of like how to solve those. Well, we've solved similar problems. So you can go look at those problems, find things that work there and figure out, okay, what were the skills that they actually needed to implement those solutions and start learning those skills, just like we talked about before, breaking it down into each one of the little steps. This applies to, the little problems that you have. Break it down in those little steps. What are the skills you need at each one of those steps? Learn them and then apply them, see if they work for you. If they don't, go find something else.
And there's a process of iteration, a process of experimentation, a process of, sometimes you don't even have to have a model or a template that you can follow. You can literally just try a bunch of random different shit. Yeah. Half of what I've learned has been me just like fucking around and trying different stuff. Like, especially a lot of the BDSM stuff. And I know that you've started doing some BDSM stuff too. I didn't have a model for that. I didn't have a template. I didn't have anyone that I learned from. Now, if I had gone and searched for, there's probably people out there doing that stuff. I'm not saying that I fucking invented BDSM on Tinder or something. Of course not. But I didn't have a model. I didn't have any clue if it was going to work or if I was going to get arrested for searching for BDSM. I literally, in my paranoid mind, thought that the police were going to come knocking on my door as soon as I put BDSM pictures on my Tinder profile. I literally, I don't know why I thought that, but I just thought that. But I experimented. I tried. I made some mistakes. I learned. I figured out what worked. And so, again, it's about trusting that there must be something that will work out there. And either you need to change your goal and lower it to humble yourself in order to work up to the big goal, or try some new method or experiment or just tweak someone else's, model or method. There's always a solution. And I think having that mindset, it absolutely empowers you like nothing else. Just believing that like, no, there has to be an answer. There is an answer. One of my favorite short stories is by Isaac Asimov. He's a, old school science fiction writer. And the story is called, I can't remember what the story is called, but it starts with like in the beginning. Let me look it up because it's absolutely worth looking. It's about like Genesis and, I think it's just called In the Beginning. I think it might be called In the Beginning. No, that was the name of his book. Whatever. Guys, look it up. It starts with, or it ends with, let there be light. So if you just search for the word let there be light, the story comes up. But basically the whole point of this, where I'm going to, humans basically, or the human race develops this amazing supercomputer that can basically like answer every single fucking solution on every single question, including what is the meaning of life? Like the ultimate question. I think the story might be called The Ultimate Question, actually. And right at the end of the story, so this computer has been like building itself because it's so advanced that it just keeps reiterating on itself, billions of years into the future where humans don't even exist anymore. We've all like ascended into one consciousness as part of the computer, and like life in the universe doesn't even exist anymore. There's just the computer has like absorbed all life in the universe, and it's all fucking, every sun has like gone into the universe, every star, every bit of matter is in this computer trying to figure out what is the meaning of life. And the last human basically asked this computer, like, what is the meaning of life? And the computer goes like, I'm still working on that. And the person says something like, are we ever going to find out the answer to this? Or is it just impossible? And the computer says a line that has stuck with me forever. It says, no problem is insoluble in all conceivable circumstances. So basically there is not a single problem that can never be answered. There's not a single one. Like we will eventually answer in some scenario or in some situation or in some circumstance, we will answer every single question. And if you want to call that faith, if you want to call that delusion, if you want to call that like stupidity to believe something like that, then fine, whatever. But I ask myself, does that belief, as in believing that every single problem has a solution, does that serve me? Served me pretty fucking well so far. And so I think just trusting that you will find a solution or there will be one, the same as your startup. It's like, well, we don't know how to fucking solve poverty or how to at least like make a dent in it or improve it. But like, there has to be a fucking answer. There can't not be a fucking answer. I refuse. It's that stubborn refusal. You can even call it like headstrong stubbornness. You can call it stupidity. You can call it delusion or whatever. But it's like, that fucking serves you pretty well, doesn't it? It's better than
those are the
believing
people
the
that
opposite.
actually solve the problems, are the people that are delusional and crazy and
How fucking do you think? Wait, what do you think people said when, you know, Elon Musk was a kid and he's like, oh, we should go to Mars? People are like, you're a fucking idiot. Like, NASA has no interest in going to Mars. So, like, what the fuck are you going? How are you going to go to Mars, dipshit? Just go start up your stupid little PayPal bullshit or whatever you're doing. And he was like, nah, I think we can get to Mars. I think we can have battery powered cars. I think we can do all this weird shit. And despite how crazy that might seem, it's that complete refusal to give in. He's now the richest man on the planet, by the way, in case anyone like has any sort of, oh, but Elon Musk is an idiot. It's like, I'm sorry, but like the way that money works, or money is a symbol for value. You cannot be the richest person on the planet if a lot of people didn't think you give value. That's what money is. Despite you as one person and your opinion of his craziness or whatever else anyone might have, it's like the world thinks differently. The world thinks that he has some value there. And at some point, he would have been absolutely crazy and laughed at. Think of Archimedes and all the people throughout history that were laughed at and told they were an idiot. Galileo, all those kind of people. You're crazy. The earth is flat. Like, no, sorry. I think Galileo was Earth is the center of the universe. I think that's what he was killed for because he said, no, the sun, like, we're not the center.
yes.
These people are all fucking crazy. Who was the guy? I cannot remember the name of the guy who basically said, hey, I think there's such a thing as bacteria and that we should be washing our hands after we do surgery, because I've noticed if I just wash my hands instead of just like fucking doing open heart surgery, it wouldn't have been open heart, but like open surgery on some guy and then just going to the next person, more of my patients seem to die. But if I wash my hands, less of them seem to die. That guy on his deathbed was still considered a fucking laughingstock. And like he didn't work in the medical industry anymore because everyone said it was fucking crazy for saying that there's such a thing as bacteria. They said, oh, there's little like people down in your hands spreading disease. You're fucking crazy. And so ultimately, I guess the point that I'm getting to is if you have that stubborn craziness and you believe, I guess that guy's not really relevant because he didn't have a solution. But if you believe that you have a solution, it's like you will, with your stubborn craziness, bring it like home. You will make it come true.
There's another story in the medical industry. I think it was the creator of penicillin, and basically he had basically some sort of like bacteria happening.
Yep,
and
the two
it was
Petri dishes.
Yeah, and was basically saying we can use penicillin to actually stop these things, and they were like, no, you can't. And so he had to actually consume the bacteria, consume the disease, inject himself with the penicillin in order to show them, yes, you could actually use this.
Yep. He basically risked his own life. Yeah, I know that story. Yeah. Because he's like, right, fuck you guys. Like, let's do the ultimate fucking test. I gotta have faith. I would have used an assistant. I would have been like, no, I wouldn't have. But like, use your dog or something. I don't know. But whatever. Let's jump into some questions, man. I feel like I could talk to you forever, and I feel like if we don't jump to the questions, we'll never actually get these done. So, some of the people from the forums, said, all right. A BDSM scheme for online dating. I love the word scheme. BDSM scheme, template, whatever, for online dating. Do you use the same template that Andy uses, or do you tweak it? And if so, how? And do you just use this scheme for your matches? So I guess what he's saying is, let's just phrase it like this. What do you do for BDSM, to meet girls who might also be into BDSM on Tinder, Hinge, etc.?
Yeah, I use pretty much the same template that you do on your profile on the advanced part. One thing that, I do a little differently because I haven't taken a bunch of like pictures or anything. I think when you start texting them, you ask like, we take pictures. Do you want to be a part of that? I usually just go straight to logistics after that. And then when I'm on the date, I'll usually start to bring up BDSM. So we'll have like
Mhm.
sort of your normal chit chat in the beginning,
Mhm.
and then I'll kind of escalate and move it towards sex and just start asking them like, what are some things that you've done? Or
Yep.
if they've never
Yep.
done anything and I know that, then I'll be like, what intrigued you about
Yep.
it? And so I can kind of just get an idea of what they've done and then try and figure out if they have any boundaries or any, hard limits there.
Mhm.
And usually, because we've already talked about sex there and they're probably pretty excited about what we just talked about, that's usually when I try and pull, is from there.
Yeah. Were you into BDSM like before, like during your marriage? Or is this like a relatively new thing?
No, so that I was kinky in
Hmm.
my marriage, and like in the beginning, we did a lot of like exhibition stuff.
Hmm.
But we never tried out like BDSM. And so when I found your content and like you were into that, I was like, this sounds kind of interesting. I want to try this out. When I first started, I was using the stuff that's in the Tinder guide, which is like, hey, I just want something casual. And you kind of ask them like
Hmm.
those few questions, like, what do you do? And what do you like to do
Hmm.
for fun? And those types of things. And I was like, I just want to try out Andy's other line just to see if I can get some more engagement from it. And like, you get a much better response, especially like on Hinge when you message that first one of like, hey, you're sexy.
Yep.
I'm looking for something specific. And so I got much more people coming back. And then just saying like the BDSM stuff right off the bat, like makes things go so much more efficiently,
Yep.
which I like. But then it's also being honest, like very upfront. So when you go on
Yeah,
the
man.
date,
Yeah.
it's like so much easier to escalate and talk about sex and then pull later.
Yeah, you both know what you're there for. That's why I started doing it, because I had a lot of dates where I hadn't mentioned BDSM or kinks or anything, and then it's almost like I was too scared to even say it to them on dates. And so I would have sex with them a couple of times, and then I'd be like, do you want to try some ropes or blindfolds? And I would have a couple of girls say like, no, thank you. And I was like, oh, fuck. Well, I like you and I enjoy the sex, but I kind of really am excited to
Mm.
explore this more kinky side of myself. And I obviously can't do that with someone who doesn't want to. And so for me, it was more like a necessity thing. I was like, okay, is there a way that I can mention this stuff, you know? And to be fair, I also, a big part of why I did it was because I had been getting friend zoned quite a bit because I wasn't that confident stating my intentions or being sexual. And so I got quite frustrated and I was like, fuck this. Let me just try BDSM stuff because I don't really know what I'm doing with BDSM. I think I only had a blindfold at that point in time, but I was like, fuck it, I need to sort of explore that side of myself. So
I like to
if,
use it. I like to use it as like a front door, like a Spartan horse into what they're really into. So like I like a lot of variety in my sex life, and I kind of get bored a little bit, like if I do the same things over and over again. Uh, and so I love to know the different things that they're into because then it just opens up the gamut. And so like coming in with a Trojan horse of like, have you ever done BDSM? If they've done it, well, that's fantastic. Then what kind of things have you done? If they haven't, well, then they're super interested in it. And when they come back with me, she knows that like we're going to do some stuff that we've never done before.
yeah,
And so then it kind of opens that door to like, what other things could we do?
yeah, especially if you get her to write a bucket list, like you can literally say, hey, just tell me, write a bucket list, go away, write a bucket list and tell me everything that's on your list, like everything you've wanted to try, or even if it's something you don't want to try, but you've just thought about. Another way you can phrase it, because some girls they'll say like, oh, I don't know what I'm into. Like, you get that answer sometimes. So you can kind of say, okay, what's the kinkiest thing you've ever seen in porn? What's the filthiest thing you've ever seen in porn? And they will usually tell you that. And so that's a decent segue into that. So if someone is, because you didn't really know what you were doing at the start, were you nervous or was it just like, oh, I'll just try a bunch of different BDSM things? And like, how was the start?
Yeah, being like dominant in the bedroom was not something that I was very comfortable with yet.
Okay. Yep.
And so like starting to relax and kind of get into that like more primal state and like these are my urges and these are the things that I want to do took a lot. And I think it was like being with the first couple girls that were into that and were comfortable. And you just kind of like have to take this leap of faith that like you can, smack their ass really hard, or you can pull their hair, or you can use a blue blindfold, or, use cuffs or whatever. Like every one of them has just kind of been a leap of faith. And then did they like it? Oh shit, they really enjoyed it. So then you kind of like be a little more dominant. You lean in a little more to that.
Yeah, I was fucking terrified at the start. And if you're really terrified, you can just ask like on the date, like, what stuff do you want to try? And
Yeah.
then, maybe she says like, oh, I want to try spanking. And then you're like, okay, I'm gonna like, and it is a leap of faith. Even when they literally tell you, I want you to do this, I want you to do that. There's still this fear because it's something you haven't done. What if she doesn't like it? What if I do it too hard? What if I don't do it hard enough? What if she thinks I'm weak? What if she thinks I'm boring? What if there's a lot of pressures that we can put on ourselves? And I think relaxing is the right word, man. Like it's a leap of faith, and then it's just relaxing and giving yourself that permission to suck. And I, for quite a few girls, would literally tell them at the start, I was like, I don't really know what I'm doing, but let's try some stuff together. We'll have some fun. Like there's that vulnerability coming back in. I don't really know what I'm doing, but here's my plan. We're going to try some stuff. We're going to see what we like. If you like something, tell me. If you don't, just tell me that it wasn't that good. And then we'll kind of like figure each other out together. So I think for a lot of guys, they're intimidated by kinky sex or BDSM or anything other than just, like normal sex. And really, you just have to like give yourself permission to not be perfect. I think, how the red pill can focus a lot on like being an alpha male and being like that and I'm all for being an alpha male. Sure, fine, if that's something you want. But they have this like idealized version of it. You have to be that all the time and the mask can never slip and you got to be perfect. I see a lot of people do the same thing with BDSM or being dominant or even just like exploring kinky sex. They're like, I can never break character. I have to just like be fucking in character the whole time. And I was like, no, break the fourth wall. Like I've said this a million times and in a second you can tell me what your BDSM sex looks like. But for me personally, the vast majority of the time, I break the fourth wall because I will literally say to her, how does that feel? Like, we can take a break if you want to. We can pause. I'm not like in character, like you must kneel, sit, good girl. Like I do that stuff, but then I will kind of break the fourth wall and say, how's that feel? Is that good? Like, are you having fun? Like I will literally say, are you having fun? That's breaking the fourth fucking wall. So you don't have to be in character the whole time. You can if you want to be, but don't put the pressure on yourself. So was that something that you found, that character breaking kind of thing?
Yeah, definitely the like first times that I would try something new, I would definitely check in and like, how does that feel? Does it feel good?
Yeah.
Do you want me to keep going? And yes, that's not like as dominant in the moment. Like you're asking like, hey, how does this feel? But I think it is because like you're still trying to facilitate a good, you're still trying to facilitate like a good experience for both of you. And so that in that aspect, it's more dominant. But then once like you're comfortable, then you can kind of just lean into that. I also like to make it more comfortable for myself. Again, I like variety. So I'd set up like something new that I'm going to do with each girl. So it's kind of like a new experience for me. So
I do the same thing. Yep.
One of my like favorite new things that I've done is I'll set up like restraints on the top of my door, on my closet door. And I'll like get handcuffs and I'll hook him up there, but I'll kind of like lead him through this whole little scene of like going through that and then slam him against the door. And they love like that aggressiveness and then like spanking their ass against the door and da da da. But the very first time that I did that, like, I don't know exactly what I'm doing, but I'm just going to have fun with this situation. So I think like setting up something new or like something fun and exciting that you're going to try out each time, I think really helps.
Yeah, for sure, man. And realizing that there's like so much depth in kink, in BDSM, in sex, even if you're just literally having normal sex. I wrote in my Tinder guide a really long like list of things you can try foreplay-wise and sex-wise. I think I ended up writing like, I don't know, 50 or 100 things. And that was just shit that I was brainstorming off the top of my head at that moment in time. Not even kink or BDSM related. There is such a wide world of sex there. And maybe we won't go massively down this path, or we'll be talking for another 2 hours, as much as I'm fucking loving this conversation, man. But like, I think a lot of people get themselves all stressed out with performance anxiety and erectile dysfunction, and like, my dick has to be hard and I have to fuck the shit out of her. And it's like, no, you don't. There's like so much, there's this wide world of sexuality that doesn't involve your dick. And I think there's nothing wrong with being obsessed with your dick, but I think a lot of guys think that that's all they have to offer, and they just haven't tried anything else.
Yeah, and breaking the fourth wall. So there was like a couple girls in these 10 lays that I had over this journey that I did have a little bit of erectile dysfunction, and one of them, like, we had done a bunch of different things before we were going to have intercourse, and then it just was super freaking tired. I was a little nervous, just wasn't up to performance, and went to put it in, went totally soft, and I just had to stop. I was like, hey, like, I just can't do this right now. Can we just, take a break, chill, talk for a little bit? I'm really super in my head at the moment. So trying to like break
Mhm.
that fourth wall, be honest, tell her. She was totally cool with it. We had, a great conversation. We didn't end up having intercourse, but, we did plenty of things before that happened.
Yeah, for sure, man. I've had moments where it's like, a girl is about to come over and I'm just so fucking tired. And like, I'll like literally look down at my dick and I'll like, almost have a conversation. I'll be like, you're not going to work tonight, are you? Like, you're just, and a lot of guys will beat themselves up and be like, fuck you, dick. Like, why aren't you getting hard? Like, but as nice as you can be to yourself in the moment actually helps the most. So, it's about integrity and honesty and just saying like, hey, my dick probably isn't going to work. And so I've had times where I will text the girl as she's about to come over and I'll say, hey, look, I'm super tired. I've had a really hard day of work. I'll be honest, I don't really feel like, fucking the shit out of you. But if you want to still come over, what we can do is we can cuddle, we can chill, we can talk, maybe we can eat some food or something. We have some, have something to drink. And if you want, we can play with the vibrator or something. And you can just lay on my chest and play with the vibrator and I'll stroke your hair or whatever. And, we can give you a massive orgasm. Maybe I'll edge you a little bit and deny your orgasms a few times and make it kind of fun. I'll play with your nipples. Like, I'm down to have some fun. Maybe I even spank you a little bit, tie you up. I'm down to do that stuff. I just don't think I have it within me to like fuck the shit out. I don't want to be like this hardcore fucking beast tonight. And every single time I've texted that, the girls are like, oh, I understand. If you still want to see me, like I'd love to come over and, I can make you dinner if you'd want. And these are like just casual friends with benefits. These aren't like relationships. And they're like, like I can give you a massage if that'd make you feel good. Or some of them will just come over and they're like, I would actually like to just play with the vibrator in front of you and you watch. That's kind of hot. Like that's actually kind of sexy. I've never done that before. Like you leave your clothes on and I'm going to be this like naked, vulnerable woman who's like getting herself off. I'm such a little slut that even when you're tired, I can't help but get myself off. It can turn into this like fun sexual role play. And I think that's where the positivity comes into it. If you find ways like solutions to the problem or find ways that it can be like this fun exploratory thing that doesn't involve your dick rather than, oh my God, my dick isn't working, I'm a failure. Start thinking, okay, my dick isn't working. What other cool shit can we do instead? What's the solution?
Even if you're not like ready at that stage to be that vulnerable, I mean, that's like pretty vulnerable to be in the moment and like things not working. You could even frame it and turn it around. Like, remember, you're being the dominant one in the situation. You can be like, you're not getting my dick tonight, and you got to, got to work for it. Yep. And like, you go sit over there, and you play with yourself with the vibrator. And I'm gonna chill here, and you don't get this tonight.
Yep. I've done that. I did that so many times at the start. I still do that sometimes. Like, it's one of my favorite things to do. It's the like, because most women have never had a guy like deny his dick. Like most women have never had a guy say like, no, I'm not gonna fuck you tonight. Because guys, we're horny animals, and most of us have never really played around with, power dynamics and, who's in charge and who's not, and you're a good girl and you don't get my dick and you have to beg for it and you have to work for it and all that kind of stuff. So it's incredibly intoxicating for a lot of women. If you're like, no, you don't get my dick tonight. And she's like, what? Why? And you're like, no. Because I don't know. I don't think you really want her. I don't think you've been enough of a slut tonight. And she'll be like, no, please. Like, what do I have to do? And you're like, well, why should I have to tell you what you have to do? Like a slut who desperately wanted my dick would know what to do, wouldn't she? She wouldn't be asking me what to do. And she's like, oh, please, I'll do anything. Well, take your clothes off. Start masturbating. Come on. You're desperate for it. You keep telling me that you're desperate for my dick. Why are you still clothed? And she would like rip her fucking clothes off at like Mach 10 speed. Like all the fucking clothes come off. Well, what do you want me to do now? Play with yourself. Get yourself off of me. Show me how quickly you can orgasm. And then, she does that. And then at that point, maybe she says, can I have your dick now? You're like, it's getting kind of late, actually. It's it's like 8 p.m. I've had a hard day. Plus, you're pretty, you're beautiful. I really like you, but I don't know. I'm just not really feeling super horny. And sometimes in even just playing that game, you end up getting disgustingly fucking rock hard, and you're like, you have that moment where you just break. Like the beast comes out and you're like, right, fuck this game. And you just grab her, you fuck the shit out of her. And that's hot as hell. That's so incredibly hot. But sometimes you're still just too tired or too stressed. And she'll say, can I give you a blowjob? And you can just say like, no, just like play with yourself. And so it's not about, make sure you make it in a fun game. Don't just say like, no, fuck you, you don't get any pleasure. Just sit in the corner and do nothing, because that's not very fun. Like, make it a fun game. Make sure she still has fun. Maybe she still gives herself an orgasm, or you still play with her a little bit. Maybe you tease her pussy, and when she's about to come, you stop. You know, that kind of stuff. Make it a fun experiment. But yeah, that's another really good way of taking the anxiety away from like, oh, my dick has to work and I have to perform. It's like, you can give her the best night of your life. Yeah, man. Yeah. Because it's not all about your dick. It's funny that, you know, a lot of women will say like, men objectify women. And it's like, no, hey, men objectify themselves. All I am is a dick. The only thing I have to offer is a penis. There's not my hands, not my mouth, not my words, not my intellect, not my capacity for fun or teasing or enjoyment, just my dick. That's all I am. It's like, hey, come on, that's objectifying. It's like, eyes up here, please. I'm not just a dick. Like, don't. Should we answer some more questions?
Yes.
Manly Cockfellow asks, I would love to hear you and Andy talk about how you developed the proper mindset, skills, connections, and courage to start a business, as well as essential lessons that you've learned starting one. Maybe we'll answer that in two separate ways, two separate parts. So how you develop the mindset, skills, connections, and courage to start a business. Do you want to go first?
Yeah. So I think I talked about this a little bit earlier in the podcast about, I was originally working in architecture and decided that I wanted to quit and try and start my own thing. And when I first started, I didn't know exactly what the hell I was going to do. So I just kind of took some of the skills that I already knew. I was like, I know how to do web design. I know how to do photography. I was starting to learn like how to build sales funnels. So I was like, I'm just going to go do that for other people. And I didn't have like any niche. I didn't have like one specific thing that I was doing. I was like, I can just freelance all of these different things. And I like started to get a few clients. I was working with a friend there that I had met in the city that I was living with, and he had a few clients. So I was kind of like getting some work from him. And really, it was just like starting to break this down, like we were talking about earlier. Like, what are the skills that I need to learn to kind of do these things? And just trying and failing a ton. But with each like little thing, I was like starting to get a better understanding of like what I actually wanted to do, because the reason that I quit architecture was because I was deeply depressed. I didn't feel like the work that I was doing, you know, meant anything. So in this search, not only was I trying to like find a way to make income, but I was like trying to find something that I would actually be happy doing, something that was going to give me a purpose in life. And so really it was just trying out a bunch of different things. And I didn't know if I was going to be able to make a ton of money or do whatever. So started doing those things, and lo and behold, you know, I wasn't making enough money to actually pay the bills. So I had to go get a part-time job of selling windows. I did door-to-door sales for windows just to kind of bring in some more income while I figured out how to learn these different skills, how to, you know, make connections, and still figuring out what I wanted to do. And in the long run, I didn't end up doing any of those things. You know, now I'm building a startup in education because I've, you know, found that was what I actually cared about. But it took me like trying out a ton of different things before I actually found that.
Yeah, my answer is going to be very similar to that. What I'm hearing from you, hey, ready? That's the therapy thing that you said, right? I feedback what I think I heard you say.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing from you is a combination of, you know, giving yourself permission to suck at the start, experimenting, trying a bunch of different things, being okay with it going in a completely different direction and not necessarily resisting that. Because I think some people will go, no, I said I was going to start this type of business, and they're almost arguing with reality or arguing with where the business wants to go. Like, your customers and your consumers and all of that will give you feedback, and they will quickly show you, they'll hold up a mirror and quickly show you what stuff is working or what stuff would make you money or what stuff just gets good feedback. And I see a lot of people resist that and fight that. And this guy's question, he specifically says the word start a business. So that makes me think he's in the stages where he hasn't even started a business, right? Because he'd be saying like, hey, I started a business, what should I do? And so if haven't even started the business, I'm not going to give you any tips on like what to do long term or like what the mistakes I made or any of that, because I think that's almost like trying to memorize pickup lines when you haven't ever talked to a single woman.
Yeah.
And so, as you said, the answer I think is you just got to fucking start, man. Like, you have to be okay with fucking up. It sounds like you're going in a completely different direction to where you started. Me too, to a large extent. Like I started out editing people's Tinder photos and like doing photo shoots. I don't do that anymore. I don't really like that, but I couldn't have known that until I did it. I fucking love photography. Who would have guessed that I don't like taking photos of people for their dating profile? I really don't like it. And I would never have known that until I did probably, I don't know, 20 photo shoots. And I was like,
Yeah.
why don't I enjoy this? And so if you're wanting to start a business, the only thing that really matters is to fucking start. It sounds reductive or like we're not answering the question, but what could we possibly say if you haven't? It's like we talked about breaking things down into baby steps. A lot of people, and I don't know if this guy's doing it, maybe he is a little bit, they'll ask the questions that aren't relevant yet. Like, how do I develop the connections? How do I develop the mindset, the skills, and the courage to start a business? It's like, brother, that's like step 30. Like connections with other people, that's step fucking 30. That's not step 1. Step 1 is start the business. So I think it's just give yourself permission to suck. Be okay with making no money at the start.
I think you have to be
losing a bit of money.
I think you have to be like okay with failing, and like it's not even a failure. Like I had to go start selling windows because I wasn't making enough money as an entrepreneur, and I could have stopped and said, you know what, I failed. Like I can't do this. But instead, I was like, okay, I'm going to bring in a little money, and I'm still going to move towards this goal. Like I'm still going to put in work. Maybe I can't do it full time, but I can do it, part time. Like most of the time, I would give the advice of like stay in your day job, do a side hustle, like start to find out what you actually want to do from there. And then maybe as you're bringing in income, then you can, go all in. But I'm not one of those people like burn the bridges. You have to go in all in at the beginning and basically full force there.
I was. And so that was my absolute journey. It was like I quit probably 2.5 years before I could actually pay the bills. And so the last 2.5 years has been like 2.5 years of racking up debt, which I'm now going to have to pay off over probably, I think I have about like, by the time you add in tax debt, I think I owe about $200,000 in tax and like a bunch of other debts and credit cards and stuff like that, which will get paid off. But it's like, fuck me, man. Like you have to understand. And I knew I was going to be all in, and I knew like whatever the fuck it takes. I'm not someone that can do a side hustle. That's just me personally. And so if you are the same person, if you are that mentality, like fine. If you're not that mentality, listen to fucking Bman. Like, and if someone said, well, I don't know which one I am, I'd say like, listen to fucking Bman. You don't have to burn all the bridges. You do not have to sink or swim. You don't have, I'm telling you, it comes with a lot of sleepless nights. You have to be okay with that. Like I'm talking possibly years of sleepless nights. You have to be okay with that.
I'm always trying to figure out like what's most sustainable. So if you're building a business, it's probably a big vision, something that's going to take a long time to build. You're not going to be able to do it in 6 months, despite what all the Instagram people will have you think. It's going to take a long time to do. And so you need to be able to make your life in a way that's sustainable, that you can keep putting effort towards that. So if that means you need to bring a little extra income from, a side job or whatever, that's fine, because you're still moving towards that. One of the things when I came to your content, you're like, go all in, and heard all these stories of like, you taking a $10,000 loan, moving to the center of the city to like get better at dating. I think that's great for some people. That was not the model that I was going to follow. I was like, I need to make it sustainable with the rest of my life. Like the startup is more important. I had to say what my priorities were and say the startup's more important. Dating comes second. Okay. So then I need to follow a model, make a model for myself that this is sustainable and I can keep working towards both goals, realizing that it may take me a little longer to reach those goals, but that's okay. I'm still making progress towards them.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, again, this is where we can talk about like tweaking things and figuring out what works for you and not just copying what Andy, or anyone else said. And I think sometimes a lot of things get misunderstood. Like in the Tinder guide where I say, go all in, and obsess about your dating life, it's within the context of what the Tinder guide is called. It's not called, meet a few women here and there. It's called how to get laid a ton on Tinder. And I specifically said in the context of getting laid a ton, if you want an elite sex life where you have a fuck ton of women and threesomes and crazy shit, then yes, you will need to obsess. But if you don't want that, then you don't have to obsess. And so I think people miss that. But for the second part of this guy's question, essential lessons you've learned since you started one. Like, again, I feel like the only lesson I want to give this guy, because I don't really want to give this guy like a bunch of confusing shit that might not even be relevant. You know what I mean? Like, what if a year from now he thinks back on us saying, hey, here's the lesson I learned, and he's like, that's not even fucking relevant to me. So I think the only
break it down to like break it down to the step that you're on, and like, okay, what is it I need to learn at that step? Like if you're starting a business, maybe it's like, okay, I need to come up with an idea for the business. And then you can ask me, okay, what's, a lesson I learned at that point, at that step.
Yeah. And so I guess, okay, let's give him lessons for at the start. I would say pretty much everything I've ever done, the only lesson that I ever would want to get across to someone at the start is give yourself permission to suck, because you're probably fucking going to. Now, I'm not guaranteeing you'll suck. You don't have to suck. Don't try to suck, but like you probably are going to fucking suck. That's my lesson.
Yeah, and I would say it's going to take you long. I already said this, but it's going to take you longer than you think when you're first starting out.
Longer than you want. Yeah, you wish you could just like shape reality and say, give me my successful business. And people will, brother. They will like look at me talking about, oh, I had an amazing month of $50,000. And they'll go, wow, I can do that too. And it's like, yeah, preceded by like fucking several years on Good Looking Loser helping a shitload of people. Several years on my own blog earning $0 because I wasn't trying to make money. Several years helping people on the red pill. Like all of this shit building up. Several years of sleepless nights until it all culminates in like, oh, wow, look, you have a product that people actually care about. Wow, you can actually help people and they will give you lots of money for that. It's not this like 6-month entrepreneurial, as you said, like Instagram, And now we're not saying that can't happen. With like the Elon Musk example, I would never be the person who says like, that's impossible. We're not saying that, but we're saying statistically, it's probably very likely it takes you 5 times whatever you think.
Right.
Longer than that.
Yeah.
And it's being okay with that if that happens.
And if you have like a certain skill set that like you are really good at, and you go find a model of somebody that's made a ton of money doing that skill set and they laid it out for you, like you could probably do that much quicker. Just like, we have the Tinder guide. It hasn't taken me a ton of years to do some of the things that everybody else has done. Like I did it in 6 months because I had a good process and knew where I was going.
Yeah, it's a value of a coach or even just books or YouTube or whatever. There's an entrepreneur that I very much follow called Dan Henry. And he did this like paid course seminar thingy called the Raise Your Prices Challenge. And as it sounds like, the whole point of this was like, you have to raise your prices. You're all charging too little. And so I signed up for this seminar. And by the way, it took me probably a week to sign up for it because I was so shit scared. Because I was like, as soon as I sign up for this, I know that I then have to start telling people a higher price. And that fucking terrifies me. I cannot tell you how fucking hard that was to just hit, I'm going to pay for this. And I didn't have any fucking money at that point either. And so paying for it was fucking difficult. But, as soon as I hit that button, I joined the Facebook group. Like the seminar wasn't even started. It was like a 3-day seminar thing. It wasn't even starting for a week. But as soon as I joined that, I was like, everything this motherfucker says is that we don't charge enough. I think I know in my heart that I'm not charging enough. So fuck it, man. I'm going to double my prices. And like it hadn't even started and I doubled my prices. And I remember posting in the Facebook group and I said, hey, Dan Henry, you've just given me permission to double my prices. I was so fucking terrified to do this. Thank you, man. This was like the scariest thing I've ever done. And, we start the actual seminar on day fucking 1. I was talking to him and I kind of just said like, this was like a group seminar, but I made the most of that seminar. Holy fuck. There was like 80 people in that seminar. And I think I probably hogged like 50% of the airtime. Like legitimately, I was a fucking like hog of that fucking time. And I think it was on day 1, I then raised my prices from $2,000, which I'd put it up to $2,000. I raised it up to $5,000 immediately. I said to him, you know what? Fuck it, man. I'm gonna charge $5,000 for my one-on-one, 12-week coaching. I'm fucking scared. I'm gonna do it. Let's fucking do this. And so, just having someone ahead of me who could say, "Yo, you're not charging enough," that saved me probably, I don't know, like 2 or 3 years. It would have probably taken me 2 or 3 years to work up the confidence and show myself it's okay. But because I had someone ahead of me who had, as you said, a model of like what's possible. And this guy, by the way, charges like $50,000 for his coaching. If you want to meet him in person, you have to fly out to him and he'll sell you 3 meetings, which can be like about 2 hours long, for $100,000. And I was like, fuck me, man. That's nothing compared to people like Grant Cardone, who charges, I think, $50,000 for 1 hour of his time on a Zoom call. So like having people who are ahead of you really shows you what's fucking possible. So we can sum all this up, to answer this guy's question. Like, all you really have to do is get started and don't be perfect, and you'll figure out the rest anyway. You'll make a lot of mistakes. You'll fuck up. Hindsight is 20/20, but you'll be fine. I think we can also say that you'll be fine. Like it will work out if you don't quit.
Yeah.
And the business might be radically different from what you started, but like that's okay too.
Yeah.
He also goes on to ask, oh, I like this question, man. Would also love to hear both of you talk about your darkest moments and your greatest successes on your entrepreneurial journeys. Do you want to say a dark moment and then a happy one, and then I'll do the same?
Okay. So a dark moment, and this is going back to my marriage, was when first like saying, okay, I'm quitting architecture. So that means I'm not going to be bringing this income in. And we had just bought a house, actually. So, we have a mortgage, but I was smart and like started renting out the room. So they paid the mortgage. So I was like, we have a little bit of cushion. I'm going to do this. And I was hustling, trying to get clients, all these things. And I'm telling her consistently, like, I'm going to do this. Like, I'm going to bring this money in. It's going to be okay. And then I'm not able to bring it in. And I have to go to her and say, hey, I'm not doing what I said. Like, I can't, make money at this point. I don't know how long it's going to take before I can actually like start doing this. And just had to break down, and start crying to her. Like, I'm going to figure this out, but I'm not doing it right now. And it pained me every time to be like telling her, like, I'm going to figure this out and keep working towards that, but, not getting the results. Just like it makes you feel like you're lying. It makes you feel like you can't do it. And it's just like, so painful.
I have been there. I can just steal the same one then. Yeah, I've had about 2 of those moments as well where I just had to say to her, like, it's just, no, it's not working. Like, people aren't signing up for coaching. And the next statement is, okay, so here's what I'm going to do. But yeah, you're right. It's like it feels like, or you tell yourself the story of like, so I'm a liar. I don't stick to my word. I'm not good enough. Like all of that kind of stuff. There's so much growth in there and so much beauty. Like I funnily enough would say those are some of my favorite moments as well, because I had to, it's like she held up the mirror and basically said like, okay, what are you going to do? Like, and you have to look in the mirror and say, what am I going to do? How am I going to fucking fix this? That really is the moment where it's like, it's sink or swim. It's like, you find out who you're made of. That's your actual courage being tested.
Yeah.
So those moments do come for a lot of entrepreneurs. Maybe I don't know. Maybe some entrepreneurs have a smooth, but you have to be okay with those sort of moments happening, that you might have a monumental failure, or your business might get shut down, or you might get hit with the $200,000 tax debt and go like, fuck me. Like, you hit those moments and then you really find out what you're made of. Because I think a lot of people start a business going like, and we're not talking anyone out of starting a business. It's fucking wonderful. I would recommend it to literally everybody, but it's one of those things where maybe you get more than you signed up for, or more than you expected, and then you have to like rise to the occasion.
Yeah. When you like first start out, you're pretty naive of like what it's going to take.
Yeah.
And what the person that you're going to have to become to like actually do it. Because like, and this could apply to any big goal that you're doing, but like starting a business is like one of those goals that like, it's very big. It's going to take a lot of work of you. It's going to take a lot of transformation of you, and you don't really know exactly how to do it. Like every business is a little different. So when those moments happen and you go through that dark night of the soul, like you're becoming a better person. And as long as you go through it, as long as you keep going, like on the other side of that, even if your business fails, like you're going to be a fundamentally better person as you go through it.
Yeah. You almost won't care if your business fails. Like,
yeah,
obviously if you had a choice, you'd want it, but no, I say that like at this point in time, if my business entirely how would it even fail? Like, I don't know what failure means.
If you stop, that's what I mean. That's what I
mean. Yeah. How's it going to fail? Like the only concepts I can come up with is, I don't know, if people made getting laid, my country made getting laid illegal or something, and I couldn't write about it or blog about it. So then I would take this stuff to like private Telegram groups and I would make money through there. Or, if PayPal shut my account down, which they did, and that was like a huge fucking like, and they kept the money that was in there. So it was like $5,000 basically stolen. And so I was like, holy fuck, like what do I do now? It's like, okay, well you just go on to Stripe or like a credit card payment. Oh, but like what if credit card companies take away because they don't like getting laid content, they don't like any of this? Okay, well then I'll just take Bitcoin. It's like you realize that the only barrier to your success is you deciding, hey, this is where I'm going to lay down in the sand and choose to die. And you don't ever have to do that. You can find a solution to every single problem. I've had people worry about all sorts of shit, like worry on my behalf. They're like, what if the forums get shut down? Andy, what if like your audience doesn't respect you anymore? What if they think you're a beta male or a like silly shit, you get what I mean? And it's like, well, then I'll figure out a solution to that problem. What do you mean?
Yeah. And it's
Like,
never wasted time. Like you learned a bunch of stuff. So
correct.
like even if you couldn't teach people how to get laid anymore, you've learned a ton about coaching that you could take that coaching and move to any other arena and use those skills.
Once you understand how money actually works, which I think only really comes when you're an entrepreneur or when you have a side hustle. So you can never figure out how money works if you're a salaried or a waged employee. You don't understand money. You think that money is a limited thing, that you only get that amount for that much time, and that there's nothing outside of that. You could never earn more, or you could never work less and earn the same amount. Like, you don't understand until you have a side hustle or a business that money is essentially infinite. If you find a product or a service or something that people really find value in, they will give you more money. If you give yourself wholeheartedly, and the more that you give, as in the more value you give, or the more honest you are, or the more you care about people, whatever it is, if you give more value, people give more money. That's the way that it works. And that's like a tap that never turns off until you turn the tap off. And so when you understand that money just flows, back and forth in the same way that your value flows infinitely. Like, I won't run out of value until I decide to stop helping people. That value will just keep coming forever. Like, forever, I will always want to help people until the moment I decide I don't want to anymore. And so when you understand that value flows and money flows and like that tap never gets turned off, you don't worry so much about like, what if my business shuts down? Because you're like, what do you mean? Like, there's like a million ways that I can help people. Like, if my coaching or if your startup or whatever gets shut down, it's like right now you and I could brainstorm 5 million ways that we could pay the bills this month. I literally right now could tell you 100 different ways. I can look outside my window and say, I would go door knocking and I would offer to clean people's houses and basically be their fucking slave. And at the end of it, they can pay me whatever they think that's worth. I will go up to random people on the street and say, hey, if you give me $5, I'll tell you a joke. And I'd tell them the funniest fucking jokes that I would write jokes myself. I would write a book and sell that. I would go up to people and say, hey, if I can put a smile on your face, would you give me $5? And when people say yes, I'd find a way to put a smile on their face. Like there are so many infinite ways that I could give value. That's me just looking outside the window right now for 2 fucking seconds. Like, you kidding me? I could be a porn star. I could sell my photography skills for women who do porn. I already do that a little bit. I could, go and get a normal fucking job. There's like a million infinite jobs that I could go and get. And any job that I would get, I would ask for a promotion and I'd work my way up and I wouldn't see the ceiling. I wouldn't be like, oh, I can only earn minimum wage in this job. No, I'd figure out a way. I'd say, hey, boss, I need more money. I'm a hustler. I'll do whatever it takes. Like, how can I earn more money? Can I take on double shifts? Can I take on weekend shifts? Can I fucking train up to be a staff? Can I train the other staff for you? Can I learn a management program or something? Like, I'd reach out to the fucking CEO and be like, yo, I'm a hustler. I'm a grinder. Like, what do I need to do? How do I get put up in this company? What do you need from me? I'll give you anything. Like, I'm ready to work. I'm not going to quit. Like, there are so many infinite ways. And I know you feel the same because every single entrepreneur does. It's like, what do you mean? I'm not limited to like this business. It's up here. And you realize that no one can take that away from you. No government, no tax, no legislation, nothing. Because it's like, oh, I'll just change and adapt.
That's why I'm so on about like skills. Like, you have to learn skills and those are transferable other way. So like going to the second half of the question about success, what was one of the big successes? Even before I quit my job, like, I was starting to do some freelancing and had made the amount of money that it took to get the down payment for the house. And the only reason that I had bought the house is because I had read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And in that book, he talks about assets, liabilities, expenses, and your income. And I was realizing, okay, we're paying for this apartment and that's an expense. I should probably get something that's an asset that makes me money. And I was like, well, I could, get a house and then I wouldn't have to pay the expense, but then I have a liability. So I need it to make income as well so that it can pay that liability. So I was like, okay, we're going to go buy a house and we're going to rent out the other rooms so that it can start making money. And then we can basically live there for free and eventually I can sell the house. So I hustled my ass off to get a couple sales funnel clients to get the down payment for the house. I was like, okay, now I'm going to go have my money work for me. So I went, bought the house. We lived there for 3 years and then sold the house. And that was the first time that I made 6 figures, was from the house sale. And I was like, holy shit. Like, I learned all this from a book. Like, I've spent $12 on that book and turned it into $100,000. And so I get so bullish on like, all of these skills have utility as long as you like put them into practice. The things that you're learning, like, it's going to have tangible results in the real world.
Because it never leaves you. You don't lose those. It's like that saying, I say this to a lot of people. It's like, once you've taken the red pill, you can't untake it. And we can say the same as skills. Once you learn some skill, or once you have a taste of the hustling or the entrepreneurial lifestyle, even if all you make is, like, I had one of my coaching clients recently who was going out and taking dating photos of himself with his own camera. And he just, of his own volition, just in something came into his head, and he's like, wait, I could just be asking random people, if I take your photo, will you give me $5? And he'd ask like 15 people and one would say yes. And he made something like $60 in his first week from just asking literal fucking random people, can I take a photo of you? And once he had that, that never left him. Like, he then started realizing, oh shit, I can just ask people for money. Like, and I can just do random I could mow your lawn for $20. I could do this. I could do that. I can literally just ask people for money. He can't lose that now. He can't lose that knowledge or that skill, I guess you could say, of like cold approaching strangers. That will never leave him. For the rest of his life, he knows I can just ask random people for money and they'll give it to me. Isn't that fucking cool? I mean, for fuck's sakes, homeless people know this. And a lot of us don't know this. And it's like, homeless people are more enlightened than us. And on some levels, they are, brother. They understand. I can just, they understand most people are fucking nice. Humankind are nice. Humankind won't let me suffer. They will give me what I need if I ask for it. It's like, most people don't know that. Homeless people do. So I don't know what the final point there. There's meant to be a final point, but it was great. It was a great fucking final point. More questions. Hard to Focus asks, what's one or more things that you wish you did earlier in your self-development journey?
You know, I wouldn't change the way the journey has gone. I mean, it's brought me here. It's made me who I am. But I would say to be nicer to myself as you go through that journey. I'm definitely somebody that's like always trying to figure out like, how can I get better? You know, what things can I change about myself to get better? And at some point, like, I just had to be kinder to myself as I go through that journey. And even if it's like not happening as quickly as I want, or not getting the results that, you know, I think I should be getting, to have a little kindness that I am taking those steps every day, even if they're small. I think this is something that you talk about. Like, even if you just went outside and, you know, talked to one girl, or you just went outside that day, like, that's okay. You're still making progress.
Yeah. Every single person, oh, not every, but like a lot of people that you ask this question to, people who've achieved a few goals and who are pretty happy with where they are, when you say like, what do you regret? Or what would you do earlier? Or what would you change? Most people that you ask that question to when they're happy, they just say like, I wouldn't really change anything, because then it's like it's like the butterfly effect. If you're changing something, you're changing everything, and I really like where I am. And so you can kind of extrapolate something really nice from that. You can say, okay, so these people made a ton of mistakes, like mistakes. I don't even call them that, but they made a lot of stumbles. They didn't know what the fuck they were doing. And yet, through all of that sucking and all of that, like, sometimes suffering and sometimes lonely nights and sadness and crying and pain and doubts and thinking you're not going to make it and all of that, they get to a point where they don't they don't regret a single fucking thing. And I give them the hypothetical question of, you could change something, what would you change? And they literally say, I wouldn't change anything. Holy fuck. Doesn't that mean if I'm the newbie who's at the very beginning, I don't have to do a good job? Because ultimately I will too get to a point where even if I fuck everything up and I look like an idiot and I cry and I suffer and it hurts and it's all of this stuff and I go through all of this pain and everything, I'm not going to want to change any of that. And so even when I'm in the moment and I'm feeling the pain, I can tell myself this comforting thing of like, well, Bman and Andy and everyone else, or a lot of other people, they went through this pain and ultimately they were grateful for it and happy with it. So can I be grateful for it right now? Can I tell myself in the future, one day I'll look back and be glad I suffered right now? Is this part of my journey? Is this sadness or this doubt or this fear or this terror or whatever I'm feeling right now? Is this just like chapter 3 of like my story? Is this just like the early chapters of my life? Like, is this the hero's journey, essentially? And that can give you a lot of comfort in that moment. It's like, there will be a day where I look back on this and I'm glad I felt this. And I am too. Every time I think back to my darkest moments, so much beauty came out of it. Because if nothing else, it forced me to change, which I needed.
I think the important thing that you said in there was like being grateful for that change that's happening. Like, yes, it's a shitty moment, but if you can have gratitude for it because you know that like, you're changing, you're becoming a better person as you go through this, it makes it a lot easier to go through that moment. So, and this is something that I had to learn, much later on. Like now when hard things come up, I just went through a divorce. Yes, it was amicable, but it was still hard. But I was grateful for it because of the transformation. Like I knew I was going to be a different person as I went through this.
Yeah, you're forced to change, man. And like, yeah, just to really underline that again, every dark moment that I've ever had, and I've had so fucking many, I'm literally also including all the times I was suicidal for like 8 years. I'm literally including the times I held a knife to my wrist and said, I wish I had the fucking courage to do this. Why am I such a pussy? And like was willing myself to do it. Or like I'd be walking across the road and I'd see a truck and I'd say, I wish I had the courage to just stop right now and let this truck hit me. Like those dark moments, I'm glad I had them. I wouldn't be who I am today if it wasn't. I'm so fucking grateful that I felt that much suffering and that much pain so I could see the flip side, so I could see the yin to the yang, so I could understand that like, okay, this is as dark as I can ever go. What happens if I go as light as I could ever go? Without that comparison or that contrast, no, I don't think I would have climbed as high. I don't think I'd be sitting here today. And so, I'm really glad to hear you say the same thing. It's like, what would I change? Like, why would I change anything? Though I understand why people ask the question, but I'm sure you feel this too. It's like, does the question make you uncomfortable? Isn't the right word, but like you hear the question and it's almost just like there's a knowledge gap between you hearing it and the person asking it, and we're trying to obviously fill that gap in. But yeah, just trust us. When you get there, you'll be really glad, and so it's okay if you make a lot of mistakes and have some suffering along the way, because it's like it'll be worth it. I promise.
Yeah. It's hard to like look back and think, would any of these steps, would I change those? Because each one of those came with like so much learning from them, and like so much, like if I hadn't gone through those, I'd still be at the beginning of that journey. Like you have to go through those hard, difficult moments.
Yeah, man.
One of the people that I recently had watched you do an interview of, it was a while back, but was making a comeback from the forums. And he talks about like this extreme amount of stuff that he had to go through to become the person he is now. And I'm pretty sure in that interview, he talks about like he would not change any bit of it either, because he knows that each one of those like moments, it helped him become who he is now. And so you can't take away those parts.
Well, you're taking away the lesson. If you take away the suffering, you're also taking away the lesson. And so I think there's beauty in, not that I encourage anyone to suffer, but this is more if you're currently suffering, find the beauty in it. There's beauty in that. Like Stoics talked about this all the time. Like there are so many people that talk about like, see it as a lesson, or, I talk about this all the time. Try and see the good in it. Try and see the positive rather than framing it as a negative. Like, oh my God, I'm suffering. So like, holy fuck, I'm suffering. So I must be doing a whole lot of learning right now. Or in a week from now, I'm going to look back and there's going to be a lot of learning through this. It's almost like you're giving, I don't like the word sacrifice because I think then people use that as an excuse to hurt themselves, but you can see it as I'm putting in the hard work now so that my future self will benefit, something like that. Or I'm going through this painful lesson and I'm going to try and make the most of it and see the good in it and learn from it and not just bury my head in the sand and pretend and self-medicate or something. I'm going to embrace the fear or the pain or whatever it is. And my future self will look back and thank me, because you will. Like your future self will. I look back at a lot of the shit that I've done and I'm like, oh my God, I don't know that I could do that again. It's almost like you look back and you're like, thank you, old me, because you're fucking braver than current me. Like, I don't know how you fucking went through that, but thank you. It's like, it's always worth it.
Yeah, like I don't want to go through those things again, but I'm glad that I'm here now.
I know. I look back at like the approach anxiety program that I did, like to learn how to talk to women, and I'm like, I don't think I could do that again. Like now I could if I needed to, if I had a drive. Like I've obviously proved that I could do it, but I look back and I'm like, fuck, man, how the fuck did I do that? How the fuck did I do that in like 2.5 months as well? Like, that's insane. Like, how did I get through that shit? It was terrifying. And I didn't even have all the knowledge and tools and confidence that I have now. I was not less than as a person, but like I was less knowledgeable and skillful back then. How the fucking Christ did I get through that? And it's like, I don't know. You just fucking did.
And I think that's a good thing to do is like look, I think we talked about this early in the podcast, but like look at your past self, like where you were in the past, and look at the different struggles and things that you've overcome there. And now when you're going through this current struggle, you're like, well, I went through that shit. This may seem a little bigger, but I think I can get through this as well.
Yeah, if I can do that, I can do this. Yeah. It's about like building evidence, building a library of evidence, like so that you can trust yourself.
Yeah.
Like you literally can look back and say, well, I've done all this other shit. I can do it. And if you're at the start where you haven't really achieved many goals or you don't feel like you can trust yourself yet, that's fine. That's why we literally say, break it down into tiny little baby steps, something pathetically easy that you will do. So then you can start building that trust with yourself, that relationship of like, no, I am someone of integrity. I said I was going to just walk outside for 1 minute and I did that. So look, I can do that. And yes, sure, that's tiny goal. And maybe I'm going to say it's pathetic and oh my God, it doesn't count. But like, hey, at least I can do something pathetic. If I can do something pathetic, could I do something slightly pathetic? If I could do something slightly pathetic, could I do something okay? And then you slowly build up to that point where you are doing something elite. I think people, again, will look at the end result of like you or me or anyone else, and they'll look at the highlight reels of our lives and they'll go, oh, this guy he's an entrepreneur. Isn't that fucking cool? This guy like had sex with 10 women this year. That's incredible. After a divorce too. Wow, amazing. And they look at the highlights, the best moments, and they're not looking at all the baby steps that you took to get there, because the baby steps are not glamorous. And I talk about the baby steps all the time. And guess what? Those videos don't fucking do as well because you don't really care, because it's not glamorous. It doesn't sound sexy for me to do the video I did recently saying, hey guys, I've been feeling depressed. Here's why. Here's what I've done to change it. Now I'm feeling better. You're like, okay. Wow. But like if I do a video, and I do videos like, oh guys, I had another foursome. Oh, wow, that's amazing. How'd you do that? Oh, that's so cool. I want to hear that. And it's just the way that humans work. I'm not even saying it's a bad thing. It's not. But it's worth reminding yourself when you do start comparing yourself to other people that you are comparing yourself to who you think they are. You don't fucking know them. Even after we've been here for 2.5 hours, people will think they know who you are. Mate, they don't have a clue. I don't have a fucking clue who you are as a human being. I only know 2 hours of you and what you've told me in these 2 hours. I hear everything you say. I hear what I think you said. And I filter it in through my own context and my own preferences and my own likes and my own map of the world. And I make a million assumptions with what you say. I fill in the gaps and all of that. And you might say, I went to the shops today, and I will hear fucking, I don't know, this motherfucker must have a lot of money if he can go to the shops every day. Like, I'll just hear something fucking completely different to what you fucking said. And so you have to understand, if you are looking at someone who's ahead of you, you are looking at a fictionalized version of them. And then you're not fully aware of all their flaws, because maybe they tell you, but you don't listen, or maybe they don't sit there for, it wouldn't make a good podcast for 3 hours if we sat here and said all of our flaws. That wouldn't be very interesting. But you are aware of your own flaws. And so you'll compare your worst self to the best self that you see of someone else. And you go, well, man, I have all these flaws, and then Bman is a fucking ass kicker, so I must be a loser. And it's like, no, Bman's not fucking perfect.
Yeah, I think this is one of the values of like being on the forums with the other guys, because especially the ones that like do pretty detailed logs, because you can go into their logs and you can see like sometimes they're totally fucking breaking down. They don't know what the hell they're doing. Some days they're like, didn't make any progress. They're just like, I'm here today. And then some days they have amazing threesomes or something like that. And you can like look at each one of the days and be like, well, I mean, this little bit of progress that they did led to this thing. So maybe if I can make that little bit of progress, that helps as well. Like you can go look on, my logs in the forums, and a lot of them have been like, yeah, I just kind of went out and took some photos this week. I tried to get on some Tinder. I didn't, get any matches. Still trying. There's like several weeks where I'm like, this is a dry spell. Nothing's happening. And then, I have a week where I have 3 lays in 1 week. You'd have to like see all the baby steps that, go into that.
Yeah. And humble yourself when you read those. 'Cause like, people will read your log and they'll like scroll past where you're saying, hey, I had a bad day. They'll be like, no, a bad day, don't want to read that. Shit day, don't want to read that. Did nothing, don't want to read that. Talk to one girl. No, I don't really care about that. Okay. BDSM threesome. Oh, what's this? Okay, let's have a read of this. Wow, amazing. And so it's about if you're going to skip those things because you don't want to read them, fine, fair enough. But then don't tell yourself a lie of like, oh, this guy's kicking ass all the time and I'm a loser. It's like you just scrolled through like 75% of his log, which is him admitting he's not kicking ass, you know, and then you only got to the flashy bits and then compared yourself to that. So humble yourself enough to at least tell the truth and admit when you're scrolling past someone's boring bits and only looking at the good stuff.
100%.
Hard to Focus also asked, God, some of these are big questions, man. Maybe I feel like we could go on forever. So let's give relatively like concise answers to some of these. So, and I'm saying that to myself more than you. So he says, got any time management mindset tips?
Yeah, a concise one is actually care about what you're working on. Like all these people that like try and be productive and like do all these little hacks of like, I can get more time here if I do this thing or that thing. Like the reason that you're getting distracted or don't want to work on the thing is because you don't actually give a shit about what you're working on.
Yeah, yeah. And don't just copy someone else's template of how you should be spending your time. I would say that. So that's basically exactly what you've just said. But I'll see a lot of people that go like, oh, this particular like self-help guru or this entrepreneur expert says that I should be spending 3 hours a day cold emailing potential clients. So let me do that. And it's like, I did that myself where I would copy other people's like idea of a perfect day or what they should be doing. Or, you know, I should be doing 4 hours of yoga at this time and this. And as you said, it just made me unhappy because I didn't give a fuck. And I would use it as like a chore list and I would resent it. And I was like, I don't want to cold email people. That's just not, and I got nothing. I worked a sales job in the past, so I got nothing against sales. But for me and what I like to do and what I want to get across, I don't really want to cold email anyone. And so the point here is don't copy if you don't give a fuck about that stuff. And then you don't really need to ask questions about time management because you would just be spending your time relatively effectively anyway. And even if you're not, you will get more efficient over time the more you do it. So that's an answer too. Don't worry so much about time management. I agree with you. People ask for the time management stuff because they don't like what they're doing with their day. So structure your day like a perfect day. Come up with a perfect day. And if you're not there yet, like if that doesn't come to fruition because you have to work a job or something, figure out ways that you can start solving those problems. Like, how could I work less hours at my job? How could I get a pay rise so I could work part-time? Could I quit this job and get one where I have more free time? Could I start a business so I can eventually leave? Like come up with solutions to those problems.
Yeah.
He also said, final question from him, I would love to hear what you've done to overcome self-doubt. Who says I've overcome self-doubt?
Yeah, I think we talked a lot about this during the podcast of self-doubt, and I definitely still struggle with self-doubt. I mean, one concise thing is at the very first time you do it, like you're gonna have doubt, and you kind of have to take that leap of faith and go forward and do that thing. And then once you do it, you've now have a piece of evidence that you can tell yourself, like, I can do this. So, for example, the first date that I went on and actually pulled a girl back, like I didn't believe that I could do it. I had doubt that I could do it. And then, I threw out the question, you want to come back to my place? It was yes. And from then on, from that point, I had an example of going through the entire process. Like, okay, now I just repeat this for the other girls that I go after.
Yeah, that's why you set a baby step that's so unbelievably, pathetically small that you can do it. So then you can say, well, I did that, so maybe I can do the next thing. You don't just overcome doubt by talking to, like certain things will make you feel better, sure. But the thing that really makes you feel better is gathering that evidence, actually showing yourself that you can overcome your own doubts. So I don't think there's necessarily a whole lot that we could tell you to overcome the doubts other than break your goal down into something so small that you will do it. I wrote an article called I Am Always Full of Doubt. So you can just go to killyourinnerloser.com/doubt. And I talked about the fact that every single goal I have ever worked on in my entire life, I have had so many doubts as to whether or not it would work or whether or not I could do it or whether or not I would fail or, so many insecurities about me and my ability to do it. And at some point, I just stopped giving a fuck about the doubt. I stopped seeing it as this problem. I think even the framing of the question, and maybe we've gone down this rabbit hole in answering the question, but I think even the framing of the question, we could reframe this. Like, why do you need to overcome self-doubt? Instead, meet self-doubt as this friend. It's this thing that's it's you, it's yourself, it's your brain trying to keep you safe. It's saying basically, hey, have you made sure that you've got all your ducks lined up in a row? Have you made sure that you've considered all the possibilities so that you don't just jump headfirst into this like a fucking idiot? Like, self-doubt is a really nice protective mechanism. And I think a lot of people they almost pathologize, they make a pathology of. I can't say that word. They make this like fucking big deal out of, stuff that your brain is doing to keep you safe. And we talked before about seeing women as like you and me on the same team. See your fucking brain as you and me on the same team. If your brain has doubts, it's because it's trying to keep you fucking safe. Say, hey, brain, I'm grateful for that. Isn't that fucking nice? That you don't want me to fail and look like an idiot. That's really fucking nice. And if you have doubts about like, what if this woman rejects me? Say to your brain or say to yourself, like, isn't that nice that I don't want to get rejected because I want to be happy and healthy and safe? Isn't that nice? So you meet it like it's a child and you give it a little pat on the head and you say, it's okay. I know you've got these doubts. Thank you for warning me of these doubts, but I'm a man of action and I'm a man of courage. And, so I appreciate you telling me about these doubts, but I'm going to take action anyway. It's like this voice that's trying to look after you, but you get to choose what you do with it. And I think a lot of people see it as like, I have to shut this voice up. I have to make this voice shut the fuck up. And it's like, well, then the voice is going to get louder because you're not listening to it.
Yeah, you can't ever do that.
You do make a pathology of things like that. You do. Like, you eventually get to a point where you might even start fucking hearing voices and shit. Like, because that voice just gets so fucking loud because you're shutting it down or medicating it or like just screaming at it instead of going like, okay, what is the voice trying to fucking tell me? Why do I have this voice of doubt in my head? Why is this doubt always fucking there? Why is this voice saying like, you're not good enough, you're not good enough, you're not good enough? What is it trying to tell me? It's not trying to tell me that I'm not good enough, or maybe that is on the surface level. It's trying to tell me like, I didn't fucking address some shit from my childhood. Like start investigating while also taking action. Let's make that fucking clear.
Yeah, I think you have to like hold two competing ideas in your head that like, maybe you're not good enough. Okay, maybe you're not good enough yet. You haven't learned the skills to do it. Or like you said, it's like a childhood thing, that a trauma of other people telling you you're not good enough. And you have to hold the other competing idea in your head that actually I am good enough. I can take action. I'll figure it out. There's a solution to this problem. And you kind of have to have like a little bit of self-confidence while you have a little bit of self-doubt, and hold those two competing ideas in your head.
And maybe there's some truth in it. Maybe that voice is actually correct. Like if the voice says, because here's what the voice is usually speaking in the future. What I mean by that is the voice is usually saying, I could never be the type of guy that could run his own business. That's in the future. That's actually technically correct. Like
right.
It's correct in the moment, if you get what I mean. It's like right now, you're not the person that can run a business. Correct. So how do we become that person?
Right. Could you be the person?
Yeah.
That's the question.
Or could you be the person that... Sorry, could you be the person that takes that first fucking baby step?
Right.
And the answer is always yes to that. And if the answer is no to that baby step, divide that baby step in half. Could you do half of that baby step? If not, could you do half of that baby step? Keep dividing it until it's like, well, okay, fine. I think that I could Google top 5 business ideas. Fine, I could do that. Fine, I could do that. You happy, Andy? I can do that. And then go and fucking do that. Fine, I could read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Fine, I know it's like $5 on Kindle. Fine, I could do that. Then do that. If you can't even fucking do that, like maybe you have some resistance. I had a lot of resistance to reading self-help books at the start. You can at least buy the book and let it sit on your Kindle for a week. And then what you tell yourself is, I will read 30 seconds of the book today. You can read 30 seconds. Even if you just open the fucking book up and stare at it for 30 seconds and you don't read a word, that's a success. You at least did more than you thought you could. So yeah, being humble. And there's always going to be a little baby step that you can fucking do. Again, I think people will look at you or me or anyone else who's, achieved anything, and they'll go like, man, this guy's such a fucking badass. Like, and it's like, yeah, but we weren't at the start.
And we
weren't
do that
for most
too.
of it.
We do that too. Like I'll get on the forums and I'll look at somebody and be like, they're freaking badass. Like, I don't believe that I can do it. And now there's somebody, looking at me the same way. Like we all look at each other in that same way as you were talking about earlier. Like you only see a small snapshot. Like you're comparing your entire self, everything that you know about yourself in your head, all these doubts you have, to this snapshot of the other person.
Yeah, and it's always a comparison thing. There's a Byron Katie counseling session she did with someone where the person was insecure about their body. And so she basically said, okay, imagine that nobody else on the entire planet exists, that you've never seen another human being, and you've never seen another human being's body. You've only ever seen your body. What do you think about your body? And the person thought about it for a while, and they're like, my body's kind of cool. Like, my body's really nice. Like, if I've never seen any other body to say that there's better versions out there, my body's actually kind of cool. Like, I like it. It's like, there you go. So it's not even that you're not good enough or that other people are better or something. It's a comparison thing. It's if you could not compare yourself to other people, and fine, it's a human habit and it can be difficult to break, but it is possible to break it. I'm still working on that. I'm not there yet, but I think it's about when you do find yourself comparing to someone else, you just go, all right, I'm on my fucking journey. Other people would look at me and be jealous of things, or if they wouldn't, fine. But like, it's not about other people's journey. It's my fucking journey. And the people that I am comparing myself to, at some point they will where I am. And if they can get there, then hey, they're not better than me. They're not ahead of me. They're just earlier than me. They started earlier than me. That's it. They're earlier. They're not better. They're earlier.
Yeah, 100%.
Method asks, if you were to dedicate a certain amount of time daily to increasing your income without a clear direction, okay, would you focus on educating yourself in a new skill set, just starting some sort of business and attempting to grow it, or would you orient yourself first towards seeking out a niche before diving in 100%? So, yeah, would you educate yourself on a new skill set? Would you just start anything and grow it? Or would you orient yourself first to find a niche?
So I would say if you have a skill set that you could provide value to people, then I say go ahead and just start using that skill set, even if it's, in the long run, not what you want to do entirely, like we were talking about before. If you don't have any skills, which you probably do if you thought about it, everybody has skills. But if you think that you don't have anything that could be valuable, you can monetize, then yes, go learn some. Go take a course. There's plenty things you could learn very cheaply for free on YouTube. Like, you can go learn photography or graphic design or something and start trying to get clients doing that. If you have a skill set, but you want to make a little more money with it, then yes, go learn more about that skill set, like level up in that skill set, start charging people more money, providing more value.
I think the one thing you just completely ignored, and you did it for a reason, because I'm going to ignore it too, is the third option. He said, like, should I find a niche? It's like, no, what the fuck has that got to do with anything? Like, you don't even know what your skills are. Like, what niche in what? What's a niche? Niche in what? So it's more like one of the first two, would I learn a new skill set, or would I basically just start anything? I'm in this position right now, actually, where a guy signed up for my coaching and he said, right, Andy, I don't want anything to do with women. Like, I'm already getting laid. I already know what to do. I'm paying you and I'm trusting you to just help me start a business. And I was like, cool, let's do it, brother. And I was like, what sort of business do you want to start? And he's like, I don't know. And I was like, so this question is basically this guy. So the first thing I got him to do, I was like, all right, brother, write down a list of 50 things that you are either good at, have some knowledge in, even if it's literally just, I have a lot of knowledge in fucking video games, this particular video game, or things that you're passionate about, or things that you've helped someone with in the past, or something that you have made a fuckload of mistakes in. And maybe you're not good at that thing yet, but you want to eventually be good, but you at least have made a million mistakes. And so he wrote this list of 50 things, and a couple of things stood out. A couple of them were things that he's like, I'm not even good at this thing yet, but I know 50 things that don't work, because I've spent the last 2 years making mistakes. And I was like, then that makes you an expert. Like, not an expert who can never learn anything. Like, you're always wanting to be in the position of student, but you know more than most people who've never done anything. And so humble yourself enough to say, I can't help the people who are ahead of me, of course. Maybe I could, but they probably won't listen to me. But there's a million people behind me who haven't made any mistakes yet, and they're terrified to make that first mistake. And I can show them 50 mistakes that I made that will help them skip those like potholes in the road. And so, he wrote this list of 50 things, and then I said, just try some of them. Like, we're not going to know what you're good at. We don't know what your skills are. How can you possibly know? And so it's about humbling yourself and trying a bunch of different things and seeing what works.
And being open too. So like you mentioned, video games, like maybe you're good at video games and you think, okay, well, I can't make money with video games.
There's that limiting belief. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, actually you could, and you have to be open to ways that you can make money. So maybe you could stream. and make money that way through Twitch or something. Maybe you could teach people how to go through this video game doing like speed runs or something. Maybe you are also good at programming, and so now you want to start making video games. Maybe you're a good storyteller. You tell stories, you like to make characters and whatnot. You could create stories for video games. If you're good at like 3D modeling, you could 3D model different, video game environments.
Assets. Yep. That was exactly what we talked about. I have a friend who wanted to start a business, wanted to start some side hustle, really, didn't know what the fuck he could do. And it clicked in his head. He's like, well, I'm pretty good at like Blender and what's the fucking Unreal Engine. I'm pretty good at like making video game assets. And he was like, what if I just make a bunch of environments, which is essentially like, you could think of it like a room or like an area in a video game. What if I make a bunch of environments, like I'll make a pretty cave, or I'll make like a school room, or I'll make like a park, or I'll make these really nice, pretty environments. Could I sell them? And it's like, mate, at this point, like, it's disgusting how much money he's earning. He spent about a year and a half just doing that, and he's earning about, I think, $10,000 a month. I should add, without fucking doing anything. They just sit there on a Unreal Engine asset store or whatever, and they just sit there, and he just gets money fucking flowing in. And so he's now talking about like, I'm going to sell a course training other people how to do that, and I can charge whatever the fuck I want for that course, and I can, put all the materials together. Here's how I did it, and then that's even more passive income. And so, yeah, I've got friends. I had a client who makes music for video games. So he really loves video games, and he's pretty decent at music. So he's like, fuck, maybe I can combine the two of them together. There's like a million different ways to make money from the things that people will say, oh, I could never have money from that. Like, for fuck's sakes, if you stop and think about it, I make money from sticking my penis in vaginas. And like, now I'm branching out to relationships and business and, mental health and all that kind of stuff. But the vast majority of my income at this point has come from me sticking my penis in vaginas. How the fuck could you ever make money from that? And it's like, once you actually start brainstorming and you take away that limiting belief of like, oh, I could never make money, and you just, as you said, be open to the ways that you could make money. If you just let the ideas come to you, they will. It might take a couple of days or weeks, but the ideas do want to flow to you. Your mind will start like thinking of ways once you take away that sort of cage that you've put there saying, I can't make money. Say, maybe I could make money, and then see what happens.
And be open to the model. So, you were just talking about that, and I have going through architecture 3D modeling experience, and you were just talking about like putting these models up. And so I just put a little mental note in the back of my head, like, that could be an income stream later on. And I can make 3D models and put them up on Unreal Engine. So I think you just like, as you're going through life, you're asking people questions, you're being humble about like, how do you make money? Just throw that out. And they may not be open to talking about it because some people don't want to talk about money. But for those that do, you can just hear about how they make money. Oh, what kind of skills? What did you have to learn to do that? And they tell you the different things. You're like, oh, I have one of those skills, or maybe I could do it. I can maybe make money that way.
Yeah, and there's a million different opportunities out there. I have a friend who makes money from working with girls who work on OnlyFans. Like, he'll take their photos and he'll do all that kind of stuff, and he makes I think like $15,000 US a month at this point, working with 2 different models. Because a lot of girls don't like having to think of content to shoot and shooting it. Like, they don't like that. They like a guy to just get in there and give them direction and say, hey, shoot this, do that. And so he makes money from that. I know a lot of friends actually who started like a home services business. So like cleaning people's houses, like literally you get in there, you clean their fucking toilet, you get the cobwebs, and you just are clean. You're literally a fucking maid. And I know one guy in particular who's making, the month that he just had, he made $150,000 US. And he started, I think 3.5 years ago. He started roughly when I started my business too. And he was literally just cleaning people's fucking houses. And then at some point he was like, oh, I should door knock on random houses and do that. And so he expanded that. So he started with fucking nothing, like literally nothing. And then at some point he had the genius idea where he's like, wait, a house will earn me this much money, but like, what if I could clean an industrial complex? Like, how does one even get into an industrial corporate fucking building? Like, how do you even say, hey, I'll clean your, like, don't you have to do some shit and have a contract and all of that? But he let go of those limiting beliefs. And he's like, what if I just start cold emailing or knocking on the door and like literally going and talking to the fucking CEO or the boss of the company? What if I just say like, hey, how's your cleaning contract? Are you happy with the work that you're getting? 1 in 10 will say like, fuck no, we're not happy. Are you kidding me? Like our cleaners are lazy as shit. And so you could say, well, what can they do better? I'm starting a business myself. I'm trying to this is where we talk about being humble and being open. He said, like, can you tell me what are they not doing good enough? Like, and I'm not selling my services to you. I'm not pitching, but I just want to know what they're doing shitly because, I'm trying to start a business. If you could get your cleaners to do one thing differently, what would it be? And he just wrote down all the feedback and took all that on. And then from that point, he said, okay, this is what I got to get myself and my cleaners to do. We're going to fix these things. And then he would go back to maybe not that exact business, although he did that sometimes, but he'd just go door knocking on random corporations and be like, are you happy? No. What are your pain points? And they'd be like, this sucks, this sucks. And he's like, cool, that's like exactly what my company fucking deals with, actually. Like, here's the process that we have in place to stop that happening. Here's how we do a better job. Can we work for you on a discounted rate for the first 2 months on a trial and you can just let us go? We'll actually sell our services to you for 30% of what we usually charge. And if you're happy, you keep us on, you fire the old people. And yeah, he got a bunch of different contractors. He expanded like fucking crazy. And yeah, like I said, I think his best month was like 150,000 in a recent month. And I have quite a few people that have done that same business model because that guy inspired a bunch of other people who wanted to start a business. And they were like, can I just copy you? And he's like, yeah, do it, man. And so they get to, as we talked about before, they do it in like half the time now because they didn't have to fuck up like him.
Yeah. If you're just starting out a business, that's like a great thing to do is like, I'm sure people are already telling you their problems. People like to tell other people the problems in their life instead of like getting annoyed of like, stop telling me your fucking problems. Like start actually listening. What are their problems? Yeah. Because if you can solve one of those problems, people will pay you for that.
Yeah, bro, people are literally telling you like, hey, here's how you could give value. Here's how you could earn money. That's what they're literally telling you when they like, even if someone literally comes up to you and says like, man, my boss is such a dick. I hate my fucking job. It's like, could I offer a counseling service where I just listen to people about this stuff? Could I offer a course on how to get your boss to respect you? Could I offer a course on like how to leave your job and find one where you're actually wanted and valued? Like, and this isn't about like going around life going like, could I make money here? Could I make money here? Could I make money here? Although you can do that if it's important to you. It's about just like listening and being open to the ideas that are literally coming to you. I hear this a lot where people will say something like this to people who are pretty successful or who have reached goals. They'll say, you're so lucky, man, I'm kind of jealous. Like, you're really lucky. And it's like, I'm not lucky. Like the universe is giving you 10 million opportunities every single second of every fucking day. I'm just listening. So I'm not lucky, I'm just open. And it's telling you too, you're just ignoring it constantly. And so it's about practicing that openness and that it's like a listening skill. It's like humility. Like write shit down when people tell you stuff.
Yes.
So, I mean, did we answer that question? Yeah, we did.
Yes.
Okay, he's got a second question. So the situation I find myself in currently is having time and having time and a good work ethic to apply. So my question is, as an entrepreneur, how would you make the most of those two qualities? So having time, so he's got lots of time and a good work ethic. Well, I mean, fuck, man, if you have, what more could we possibly give you? Like use the most of that time, work really hard, and I guess sprinkle a little bit of like permission to suck. It sounds like if he's asking that question, he hasn't really given himself permission to suck.
Yeah, I would go back to my original answers. If you have the time and you have the work ethic and you have a skill set, then go give yourself permission to suck. Go try a bunch of different things out. Put in the work to try those out. And if they fail, okay, then go learn something else. If you don't have a skill set, well, then take that time to learn something and then give your self permission to suck and go try it out.
Yeah, I think it's the flip side of give yourself permission to suck. And maybe I want to start saying this more is you're going to be okay. Or you're going to do just fine, or it will all work out, or just trust in yourself, something like that. Like you're going to be just fine. So I think that's what I would like to say to this guy Method. I'd say like, mate, you'll be fine. Like as long as you don't quit, you'll make it. And that's all you really need to know in your heart. Like, no, I'm going to be fine. I'm going to eventually make it. I might fuck up. I might take years. I might take 5 times longer than Bman did, but I will eventually get there. And it's like with that stubborn persistence, you'll be fine.
Something I used to do is like ask myself like, what's the worst thing that would happen? And when I was first thinking about like quitting in architecture, I would take my lunch break and I would walk around and I'd see like homeless people out there. And I would think about like, if I ended up in that position, like thinking like this is maybe one of the worst things that would happen, if I ended up in that position, I would go over here to the library and I would start trying to learn different things of ways to like I could make money. So I was like, that if that's the worst that's going to happen, like it's
Yep.
not that bad. And that's actually not
Yeah.
the worst that would happen. It'd be like I didn't make it and I had to go get another job. Like that's not that bad.
Yeah, it's the worst thing that can happen is a story. Or there's a quote from Epictetus or Seneca, one of those two old school, old farts. It might have been Epictetus. No, I think it was Marcus Aurelius. We suffer more in No, it's Epictetus. What the fuck? None of you care. We suffer more in imagination than reality.
Mm.
Like, I don't know which one of those. Apologies, Marcus. I'm sorry. Like, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, I'm not sure which one it was that had said that.
It doesn't matter. It's one of the old guys. They're going to come after us for copyright infringement. But yeah, Byron Katie says the same thing. It's like, your story will always be like, your story is often, reality is much kinder than your story.
Yeah.
So yeah, you'll tell yourself this story of the worst thing that could ever possibly happen. Oh my God, like I'm going to be homeless. I'm going to do this. And then it's like, the reality is you're probably not going to be fucking homeless because your friends wouldn't let you be homeless. Your family wouldn't let you be homeless. Random people wouldn't want you to be homeless. Like everyone on my forums would probably give you fucking money and not want you to be homeless. Like you also have to trust in yourself that you don't want to be homeless. And so you would make sure that you're not homeless if it ever came to that. And even if you somehow were homeless, it's not as bad as you think.
Yeah.
It's like you just walk up to maybe 100 different strangers and you say, hey, look, listen, hey, I don't normally do this. I'll be really honest. Like, I'm kind of down on my luck. I would really appreciate $5. I'm going to spend this money on a room for the night, and I'm going to go away and I'm going to go to the library and come up with a job offer or whatever so I can get a job, but I'd really appreciate $5. I had some guy actually say that shit to me one time, and like I looked at him and he genuinely looked like just, he was like well dressed and all that shit. And he's like, look, brother, I wouldn't normally do this, but I'm kind of down on my luck. Like this money is going to go towards me buying a suit so I can go and get a job. I was like, brother, here you go, $10, go. Like, so
Nice.
The worst that's ever going to happen is you just ask 100 people for money. Probably not even 100, dude. You probably ask like 50 people for money and then you get probably $50. Yeah. One in 5 people would give you $5. Yeah. You fucking kidding me? Especially if you're honest about it and you say like, look, this is not going to drugs, alcohol. Like it's straight up just going towards me getting a job. Yeah, easy. You ask. That's the worst that happens. I have to ask 50 people for money so that I can sleep tonight. And then you'd say, no, but that would be awful. No. The only thing that would be awful is the story that you tell yourself. This is so awful. This is beneath me. This is bad. But if you actually humbled yourself and said like, a bit of stoicism, like what's actually happening here? Let me look around and actually take inventory of what's happening. Well, it's just guy asking people for money, then guy goes to sleep in a cheap room. Like, that's not that bad, is it? Like, that's actually pretty okay. So nothing really that bad is ever going to happen apart from what we fantasize will happen.
Yeah, and if
we scare ourselves.
You take, start building the muscle of looking for what's positive in your day-to-day reality, even if you ended up like in the homeless situation. Okay, what's the positive of this? I don't have to go to a job. I can hang out all day.
No tax.
Hang out outside all day, like in the sunshine. It'd be like hanging out at the beach all day. Like people do that. They want to go hang out at the beach and take in the sunshine. Don't have to go to work. Get to, meet different people as I go ask them for money. Like there's definitely positives to even the shittiest situation. So if you can it comes to like accepting what would be that terrible situation and being like, okay, I would be okay with that. So if we can do this thing, like start a business and we ended up in that position, I would still be okay. I can find some positive attributes about it. So then what's the fear about actually taking that step towards starting your business?
Yeah, most of the time it's like an unspoken fear. It's like a fear of the unknown. But when you actually investigate and say, like you said, what's the worst that could happen? Or what am I afraid of? Or, another question you can ask is, and then what? So you'd say, oh, but I'm worried I'll get rejected. And then you say, and then what? Oh, well, then that would mean everyone would look at me and laugh at me. Okay, and then what? Well, then I'd feel really embarrassed and I'd run home and I'd feel like a loser. And then what? And if you just keep saying, and then what? At some point you say, well, then I guess I'd get my shit together and I'd be okay. Like that always ends up like either that or death. And if it's like you truly believe that you're going to die, well, then you're going to fucking die and it's inevitable. So why are you so afraid? Like it's inevitable. Why are you fighting it? If you truly believe that it's going to end in death, which it never will, it always ends in, I would almost die, and then I would self-preservation would kick in and I wouldn't let myself die. So there's nothing bad that ever fucking happens when you explore it to the end, but there's a fear of going there because it is a fear of the unknown. You haven't ever explored it. You've never said, and then what would happen? Or what's the worst what's the worst that could happen? But every time you do explore that, yeah, it's not even death. I've had some people where I do that experiment or that walk through, and then they go, well, then I die. And I say, and then what? And they've never fucking thought of that question. They go like, well, what do you mean? It's death though. And I'm like, and then what?
And then you don't have to put up with the shit anymore. You're done.
Literally, they say, they would tell me a story of like, well, it could be hell and it could be fire. And I'll say, well, like, do you know that's true? And they're like, well, no, but I don't know what there is. And I say, well, they eventually say, death is nothing. I'd have nothing. And it's like, so you're afraid of nothing. You're literally afraid of nothing. You're afraid of there not being something. You're like, why would that? There's just nothing there. There's nothing to, like you said, then I wouldn't have to put up with all this shit that's apparently stressing me out. So that sounds kind of peaceful, doesn't it? That sounds like a relief. That sounds like the universe, giving you a break, cutting you some slack, going like, oh, it's all right. Like, I'll kill you off because you're suffering too much. Like, that doesn't sound that bad. And so, yeah, we scare ourselves with our stories. Again, we suffer more in imagination than reality, or reality is always kinder than our stories about it. So, yeah, it's about investigating. All right, final question, big man. Mac, you mentioned him before, Mac on the forums. What is your advice for a man in self-improvement whose goal is to ultimately get married and start a family? Oh, I like that one. That's a good one to end on.
When you are first getting in the relationship, and this was something that I didn't do, I lucked out that it was, well, I shouldn't say I lucked out. In the beginning, I lucked out that it was such a good marriage, but the amount of work that we did together is what made it a good marriage. So it was half luck, half putting in the work. But when you're first starting out, being honest with your values, being honest with your priorities, your boundaries, which the goals that you have, where you're going in life, up front, and having her do the same so that you can make sure that the relationship that you're going to build is going to bring those two things together and you're headed in the same direction, is the first point I would make. The second is continuing to have that conversation. So like doing those relationship walks were like huge for the relationship. Like it wouldn't have gone to where it was without those. Like always checking in, double checking, are we still headed down the same direction that we want to go? Something that my wife and I had talked about was having kids. And we, at the beginning, we're saying like, we don't want kids. But I told her, I was like, let's keep this conversation open, because I know eventually like you're going to reach 30, like biologically that's going to kick over and you might change your mind. And we need to still check in. So every year we kind of checked in, like, do we want kids? What are we going to do? Like if that happens? So still continuing to have that conversation, checking in with one another. And then the last point I'll make is doing a lot of self-awareness. And I know Mac is like very good at this. He has a very good understanding of who he is. But for others, like doing a lot of self-awareness about yourself and your needs and your priorities, and continuing to keep doing that work is really important. Otherwise, you can't go and ask the other person for that, or you can't realize like when the relationship is, no longer good, or, you want to go separate ways. So I think all of those are important. I had one more point, but it lost me there at the end.
Maybe you'll remember it in a second, but I really want to underline and highlight the first thing that you said. I had the exact same. So we're talking about here, figuring out what you want and what your partner wants, and then constantly, and we don't mean every fucking 5 seconds. Do you want kids yet? Do you want kids yet? Do you want kids yet?
Yeah.
But just, maybe once a year for the big questions like that. Checking in with your partner and saying, yeah, how do you feel about this? I had the exact, and honesty from the start. I had the exact same conversation with Imogen probably about a year into our relationship. And so that's another thing I could say. I would say don't rush into a relationship. Let it build, like build it. What I mean by that is don't label a relationship. Don't 1 month into seeing each other go like, okay, we're boyfriend, girlfriend now. It's like, you don't know each other. You haven't earned that title, and you're slapping a label on it. It's like slapping a Lamborghini logo on a fucking like bent up old fucking bomb of a car. It's like you got to earn that label. So
Yeah.
build the relationship, build intimacy. I've got plenty of videos and stuff on that. Mark Manson has a lot of good material on that. There's a lot of people out there who talk about how to build a relationship and be pretty decent at it. Byron Katie has a lot of stuff about that, but build the relationship. But then it's about that honesty, maybe 6 months or a year into it when you are in a good place. And you can have these conversations earlier, but really sit down and say, okay, if we're going to be serious, like if we actually want to commit to each other, almost write a contract is not the right word, but that's the only word that comes to mind. Imogen and I wrote a contract, and I've gotten quite a few of my friends to do this as well with their partners. You sit down and you basically write out, here's what I kind of want from life. Here's what I want from a relationship. And you don't say, here's what I want from you.
Right.
Because then you can become resentful if you don't get it. You say, here's what I'm thinking I would like out of a relationship. And you figure out how much of that stuff you can give yourself, because a lot of it is you. Like if you say, I want acceptance out of a relationship, it's like, it's not my fucking job to accept you. That's your fucking job. So, and if I accept you and you don't accept yourself, when I say, hey, honey, I love you so much, you're wonderful. If you don't accept yourself and you don't like yourself, you're going to go like, oh, don't tell me that's not true. I don't believe you. So let's make it clear that it has to come from you first, love and acceptance from you. But coming up with some sort of, it doesn't even have to be a contract. It's like a rough plan. It's like a rough idea.
Yes.
It's like brainstorming. It's like, let's sit there and brainstorm what we might want and ask yourself the big questions. How do we both feel about marriage? How do we both feel about contraceptives? How do we both feel about if abortion ever happened? How do we both feel about children? How do we both feel about traveling? That's another big one. How do we both feel about like entrepreneur? How do we feel about risk? Like Imogen is someone who does not like risk. I'm someone who's like, fuck it, we'll figure it out later. I'm going to take risk. Figuring these things out and talking through them. There's a good, like questionnaire you can do. There you go. It's called the 36 questions that lead to love. So just look that up. It's basically 36 questions that you will ask each other. And they're really, really, really fucking deep questions, really deep questions about your childhood, about like, you know, if you only had 10 days left to live, what would be more important to you, traveling the world or spending time with family? You can also buy these kind of, they're called couples card games. You can buy them on eBay or Amazon. There's like 50 different types of ones. And so I have like 6 of them, and Imogen and I will sit down and you just like read out some of the questions in these cards. It'll be like, you know, if we were to have kids, or if we had kids and the kids were, you know, being rowdy one day, what would we do? Questions like, you know, do we believe in discipline, or would we want our kids to feel love and free and we wouldn't discipline them? Like, what would we do if our kid came home and said they got someone pregnant? It's all these sort of like life questions that might come up that you can find, not an incompatibility, because isn't the right word, but like, how would we solve this problem? It's like you can start brainstorming how you would come up with solutions and literally building a habit of, in this relationship, even just hypothetically, how do we solve fucking problems? Because I think a lot of couples, and it sounds like you two were wise enough to not do this. Maybe you did this at the start, but a lot of couples get in too deep and these questions start coming, and it's like, we haven't even built the habit of being able to solve problems. And now you're fucking pregnant and we didn't expect that. What do we fucking do? And emotions start flying. You haven't had time to think. So I think just practicing learning how to talk to each other and solving problems, I think that's my answer.
Yeah, I think I'll add to one point that's a little different when you were talking about incompatibility and seeing if there's an incompatibility. I think that's important to find those things, especially to these big questions about marriage, about kids, about money, about risk, these different things. Because if you're incompatible, some things, like if your partner says they want to have kids and you don't want to have kids, that's a big incompatibility. It's really hard to solve that problem. That's something that, you know, has to be separate. I found in my marriage, like as we went through, I was starting to feel like monogamy wasn't for me. And I actually had, during one of these relationship walks, I had read Sex at Dawn, which talks about the history of monogamy and polygamy, and in tribes beforehand, we were more polygamous. And so I started having this idea of polygamy and brought it forth to her that this is maybe something that I want to have. But we started the relationship on the idea of we were both going to be monogamous. And so now I'm trying to change the contract, if you will, like part way through the relationship. And that's very hard to do when it's one of those fundamental differences. So the more aware you can be upfront about those big differences and be honest up front, then you can avoid one of those situations happening.
For sure, man. That's why I say don't just rush to slap a label on a relationship. Like you got to build, you got to have all these, and it's not even about time. I picked 6 months, and I explain this every time I talk about this. I said wait 6 months before you put a label on it, just as an arbitrary amount of time, because that's usually enough time that you've had a couple of conversations and stuff like that. But it's not about the time. It's about building that connection and asking these questions and figuring out, hey, I want kids. You never want kids, and you've had a vasectomy. How would I feel about that? What would I do? Like, is that a problem that we can overcome? Or do I want to just say like, no, this is like too important to me. I really want kids. And, you know, in Imogen's and my relationship, that was something at the I love that you talked about checking in a lot and like really finding out the actual answers and going deep, because sometimes people will say, oh, no, I'm fine without kids. But it's like, no. You want to actually have a think about it. And so, you know, in the early days when Imogen was like 19, she said like, oh, no, I never want kids. Like, I don't ever want kids. And I was like, well, I don't want kids either. But like, I don't necessarily believe you as a 19-year-old whose parents were divorced and that really fucking traumatized her. I don't necessarily believe you when you say you don't want kids. And so one of my friends had a really great idea. He's like, Imogen should just hold as many babies as she possibly can and look after them and see if something comes up. And so she went on this mission and she did that. And, you know, she did a bunch of babysitting for a while, and she also, you know, held a bunch of babies and looked after kids. And she said, I can really see that motherly instinct within me, and I can see that. That feels really nice. But I'm 100% okay with never having kids if I lived a full life and I was able to give out my feminine maternal energy in other way. And even me, myself, like in coming to that realization many years ago that I didn't want kids, I was like, yeah, but I'm fully aware that there's a paternal side of me. It's why I fucking coach people. It's why in a lot of my articles, I have that sort of paternal voice. It's why I'm very paternal with the women that I date and sleep with. And so it's about, as you said, like with Mac, about knowing yourself. And so these aren't just simple like yes or no questions. It's not like, oh, do we want kids? No. It's like, no. Go inside yourself, and do you have a motherly maternal instinct? Does it feel good when you look after other people? Could that ever come out? And obviously, you know, you check in once a year or so. I'm going to do that with Imogen until, you know, she's 40 or so. But it's about knowing yourself, not just, it's not a fucking checklist question of like, yes, no, oh, we're compatible. Yeah. It's like, no. Actually go fucking deep on this stuff.
Yeah. I didn't propose to her until 4 years into the relationship. And even like all of that time was the beginning of my self-development journey. So I wasn't very aware of what I wanted. So I still got into this marriage, not entirely sure. And then we helped each other develop. I remember the other point that I was going to talk about was be building something with them the entire time. When we first got together, we were doing our weight loss journey together, which was amazing. And then we were getting the house, and we were starting to build this life. And doing this check-in along the way, we started to realize, okay, the lives that we want now, we're going to be building different things. And so we're kind of like starting to diverge. I also started to become more aware of what the things that I wanted. And so I was like, okay, this is a separate life from what you want. And if you want these things and I want these things, and the next part of our journeys are, in these separate paths, then I think the best thing for us to do is, get divorced. And I think when you're first going into that marriage, that was a belief that I held, was it's okay to get divorced. It's not a failure of the marriage. We can still be friends. We can still love one another. We can still support one another. We just want different things, and that's okay.
Yeah. I think people look at relationships, not even marriage. Let's just talk about relationships in general. I think people like have this idea that like, if your relationship, if you eventually go separate ways, then it must have been a failure. It's kind of like a mainstream idea. And so like, they're basically looking at every relationship, because the vast majority of your relationships will end. The vast majority of humans on this planet will not end up with the first person that they dated. Like, it just doesn't statistically work like that. And so I think most people, like mainstream, will look at that and go like, oh, wow, so most of our relationships are failures. And it's like, what in the fucking Christ? It kind of comes back to the entrepreneurial thing. It's like the vast majority of your maybe not the entire business, but the things you do within that business. You might decide, like in my case, I'm going to do a photo shoot, or I'm going to be an architect, or I'm going to try this. You might ultimately decide not to go in that direction, but that's still a really nice chapter of your life that taught you a bunch of stuff. And you don't get to have the second chapter. Look at a book. A book doesn't start on chapter 2. It starts on chapter 1. And so you don't get to in your life say, man, I wish I hadn't had chapter 1 and 2 and 3. I wish I could just skip to chapter 4. And it's like, chapter 4 wouldn't look the way it did without the first 3 chapters filling in the blanks. In fact, chapter 4 would look like a fucking failure as well, because you wouldn't have had all the skills and the knowledge at that point. You would have fucked it up. And so even if you found your dream woman right at the start, you wouldn't have had the skills to keep her around. I don't know if Imogen asked me this question the other day. She said, do you think with the knowledge and the skills and the everything you have right now, do you think that if you went back in time to your first 2 relationships, the ones that just really weren't happy and really weren't good, do you think that they still would have ended? And I said, I probably could have made them work, actually. And I'm glad ultimately that they didn't, because I get to be here, but I probably could make them work now. Yeah. But those were failures because I didn't know anything. And so the point that I'm getting to is, Imogen might be my current successful relationship, and I love it a bit, and it's been 4.5 years. If I'd met her, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, mate, we last like 1 fucking week. I fuck her a couple of times, and then that's it, right?
Yeah. I think the other side of this too is like appreciating those chapters. So like I absolutely appreciate the chapter of going through that marriage. And I know there's some guys that will come on the forums like myself that maybe they didn't do this type of lifestyle, the player going getting laid lifestyle when they were younger. And so now they're like trying to make up for lost time. There is a line in Nietzsche's, one of Nietzsche's books that he talks about basically maybe men are better off being in a relationship, like a long-term relationship with a woman to develop themselves. And then once they hit like 30, basically getting out of that relationship because they've developed themselves. I was like, that's really interesting because that's what it felt like the journey for myself. Like the marriage was playing self-development on hard mode because we were always, trying to better one another. And so now I get to take that into these other relationships that I have in dating. And my progress is a lot faster because I've learned all these other skills.
Yeah, and I think it always comes back to that saying that the grass will always be greener on the other side. And if you sit there living with regrets or doubts or maybe I should have done this or I wish I could rewrite my history, it's like you're going to just jump. It isn't a saying for nothing. Like the grass is always greener is literally true. If you had done the exact opposite of what you've done, you'd be sitting there complaining that you're not where you currently are. And so you just hop back and forwards over that fucking fence going like, oh, maybe the grass is greener over there. No, maybe the grass is greener over there. And that never really ends. And it's ultimately not an acceptance or the answer here is to ultimately accept like, hey, everything led me to where I am right now. And where I am right now is okay. Unless I tell myself a story of how it's not, but that story is just fucking bullshit. And fine, we do tell ourselves bullshit stories, but ultimately everything is okay where I'm not. Sorry, everything is okay where I am right now. Even if I have goals I want to achieve or I'm not happy with my body or whatever else it is, hey, at least I'm in a position where I can improve those things. Mm-hmm. And so ultimately everything I did led me to this moment. Even if you're at the start of the journey, I felt immense gratitude when I broke up with my second girlfriend, and it all fell apart and, I lost weight and I overcame my depression and all of that. And I was starting at the base of the journey. I was like, I dress like shit. I'm not cool. I have 0 friends. I'm 29 years old and I feel like it's too late for me and I've run out of time. I'm going to have a midlife fucking crisis. I have 2 relationships to my name and both of them were, at the time I felt like failures. And I have no fucking money, no fucking friends. But I felt this immense sense of like, but at least I can see the mountain ahead of me. Mm-hmm. Like at least I know what I want to do and I have these websites and these people that will help me and people that are giving me advice. And despite the fact that I'm not where I would like to be and I don't have any friends, I have no money, I don't have a good job, I don't have any sexual happiness, I have a 10-year record of failed relationships, but at least I can fucking make something of myself. At least I have opportunities. And so it's about just accepting, even if you're not happy with where you are, at least you have the opportunity to make yourself better.
Absolutely.
And you always will.
Yeah, absolutely.
Would you like to shout anything or anyone out? Would you like to shout out yourself? Any projects you're working on? Any self-advertisement? The floor is yours.
I would just shout out the guys on the forums. They're fantastic. They've all given me great advice along the way. They definitely helped me when I was had self-doubt or needed to learn a certain skill, which was fantastic. And shout out to you for putting together the community and like the guides and stuff. Super grateful for that. I mean, that's without that, it would have taken me much longer to try and figure this stuff out. You literally compressed time for me, which is fantastic. So shout out to, I guess, everyone else. There was no self-plug, but
You're welcome to self-plug if you would like to.
I don't have anything to self-plug. Come check me out on the forums, Bman.
Perfect. All right, guys, we will wrap up. Go out there and crush your goals. Man, I really appreciate you coming on.
No,
I forgot to say that in the podcast. I look like a dick.